Okay, I'd like to call to order the Regional Planning Governing Board meeting of Thursday, June 8th with a roll call.
Jenny Breckus.
Here.
Naomi Dewar. Paul McKenzie. Here. Marsha Burke-Bigler.
Here.
Charlene Bybee.
Here.
David Bobzien. Here. Gino Martini. Here. Ed Lawson. Here. Von Hartung. Jean Herman.
Here.
And non-voting member Veronica Frankel.
Thank you. We'll go to item 2 on the agenda. Would you please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance? And Mayor Martini, could you lead us in the pledge?
Please join me in the pledge to the greatest flag in the world. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3 for possible action, an approval of the agenda. Do I have any additions, corrections, or changes to the agenda? Ms. Robinson?
Madam Chair, thank you. We would like to pull item 6A from this agenda. We did find an error, and we would like to bring it back to your August meeting.
Okay. Do I have any other changes requested to the agenda?
6A.
Okay, seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the agenda minus item 6A. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Mayor Martini, second by Ms. Burke-Bigler. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5, public comment. I do have a couple public comment cards. I'm sorry. I'm trying to move this meeting really fast today. And actually, before we move on, I guess subconsciously I was thinking about that. We have a lot of really important big items on today's agenda. So I'd really like to ask for everyone's help in moving the agenda on point and forward so we can get through all the business that we need to. And if the meeting does go extremely long, I need to apologize in advance. I have to be at the airport at 5 o'clock tonight. So my Vice Chair, Mr. Bobzien, would take the meeting. He said we're not going past that time, but so I guess I was looking to move it fast, and I guess by open meeting law I can't skip anything. So let's go back to item number 4. Looking for 4A, approval with any corrections or additions to the meeting of February 9th, 2017. Move to approve by Member Lawson, second by Member McKenzie. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4B, looking for either corrections, additions, or motion to approve the minutes from April 13th. Move to approve by Member Lawson, second by Ms. Burke-Bigler. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we'll go to public comment. Okay, I have 2 items for public comment. I have Kathy Brandhurst. And Kathy, you have 3 minutes to speak, and you will be followed by Tammy Hostel, sorry. Okay, Kathy?
My name is Kathy Brandhurst, and I am also the United States President. I just wanted to let you know, moving into people's homes, stealing their homes, stealing houses, stealing apartments, stealing townhouses, that's not where you live. You're only stealing it. You're stealing it from somebody else who really does live there. You don't need to kill that person because you're the one that has no way of paying rent. You have no way to actually get a contract to even move into a place either. So how are you going to move in? Murder. Murder is your main goal, and you're going to have to do that in order to move in. Well, Virginia City is still having problems, and the two women that, haven't caused so much trouble in that area that they still refuse to stay out of the area. Well, we can't really do anything, can we? Because it looks like it. We already lost half the, police department in that city, Virginia City. And, what's gonna happen? They're gonna stay there regardless because they don't have a way to pay their, rent. They don't have a way to pay nothing, so they really need a place to live for nothing. And that's exactly what's gonna take place. As long as you don't have a place to live, you need to get off the streets, don't you? One way or another, you're going to steal the place anyway. By maybe murdering the whole neighborhood, by putting bullet holes in everybody so they would keep their mouths shut that you don't live there. Yes, that's the truth. And you all deny it. But you can't hide it anymore because we are catching on. Regardless of who you are, you're not United States born, period. Because you could get a job, you could get an income, you don't have to rob the banks, you don't have to kill and murder the tellers in order to break into bank accounts. Oh, I saw those pipes going from Donner Motel all the way to Nevada State Bank, right underneath my apartment.
Thank you, Ms.
My
Mackers.
room.
Thank you. Tammy, House Still?
There we go. For the record, Tammy Holt Still. I am here for two reasons. First of all, to let you know that I am a representative of the Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. We will be working with you on a regular basis. You'll be seeing a lot of us regarding what you see right there on the display. The water's not gone away. It's twice as big as the lake, pretty much, by that aerial view. We are also here to ask that you start looking at, because you are the board that covers development for this area and all of northern Nevada, pretty much, or our area anyway, that you please start looking at development in a proper way as far as feathering out, not building in water retention areas, especially closed basins, looking at Cold Springs, Stead, Lemon Valley, Golden Valley. Those areas are extremely affected by what has happened with all the growth that has been created at the front. Go ahead. This picture you see right here is out on Sandpit Road. One of my suggestions is that as of yesterday, that water is now gone. It is another area. I don't understand why we're not trying to move water over to this Sandpit Road area and put the water there so that it relieves the issues that we are having in Lemon Valley, and especially like on Idaho, where they have, the Washoe County crews were out working diligently today to save Idaho Street again. I would also like, there's the church that is on Lemon Drive in Ogden. Anyway, you can see the markings. The reason I took the picture is you can see even with the sandbags, the water made it through and up on the church, has destroyed a lot of their property, and they're out of their homes for any time soon, or the church anytime soon. Also, the last thing, as far as the pictures go, this right here was taken today. There is either somebody that's homeless, or it is for bird watching or for bird poaching, and that has been contacted. We have contacted the sheriffs regarding it, but obviously maintaining, watching to see that this kind of thing doesn't pop up. Hasn't been happening, so that's kind of stressful on the residents, seeing this type of thing happening. And that was as of today, and we think it went up 3 days ago. My other issue is, I have heard rumors, not only me, but the rumors on the street are that your board is looking to probably be changed due to Washoe County, and as a resident of Washoe County in District 5, I am really urging that you guys fight to keep commissioners on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other public comment under item 5? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. There is? Okay, sorry. Okay, it's one under 5, the others are all later, okay. Okay, so we do have one more public comment under agenda item number 5, Katie Pace.
Good afternoon. I'm Katie Pace from Senator Dean Heller's office, and I was just here to tell you about a little event we're going to have in September. Since you're talking about development and whatnot, we're having a program called Pick Up the Pace Nevada. Has nothing to do with me, but it is in regards to engaging Nevada healthcare providers in planning for programs of all-inclusive care of the elderly, which is the PACE version, as well as housing options and behavioral health developments. We're going to have this event on September 27th, and we're hoping to have healthcare providers and introduce them to this Medicare and Medicaid services method of care, and in hopes that we can correlate this healthcare with some developers that might be coming into the area and talking about senior housing issues. We all know that's a huge concern for our seniors. So just wanted to inform you of that, and I will give you some flyers. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a couple of these that do not have an agenda item on them. 2, I have 3. Oh, housing. Oh, these are all housing. Okay. Okay, it looks like the other cards that I've received are on the affordable housing piece, which we will take public comment once we reach that agenda item. So moving on past item 5, we're item 6, the consent agenda. Looking for approval of the consent agenda minus 6A. Do I have any changes or additions to?
So moving.
Second.
So moved?
Moving.
Okay, so I have a motion by Member Dewar, second by Member Herman. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we do 6A now? When do we move it?
Since 6A got pulled.
It's pulled completely. Okay. Okay.
So we're going to move on to
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead, and 6A was pulled to be addressed at our next meeting with more corrected information. So we'll move on to item C, 7A, Business of the Day, and I'm going to turn this over to Kim Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a presentation, discussion, and possible direction regarding the potential involvement in the Truckee Meadows roadmap to affordable housing. And just to provide some background information, and I'll rely on you to click for me. Thanks so much. We're bringing you to the board today is the opportunity to partner with an effort that is already underway in the community regarding affordable housing. Bless you. In January, I was invited to attend an affordable housing forum and present our housing study that you may remember from just late December, and present the results of that particular study as part of the conversation that was being had at that forum. The group itself has again met in March, and then there was a community conversation around affordable housing hosted by the Community Foundation in April. So we have a variety of presenters today in terms of being able to describe the path here. Nancy Brown with Charles Schwab Bank, Tony Ramirez from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Ken Crater from Operation Downtown, Sharon Zadra from Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities, and Paul Bernard and Francis Wang from Enterprise Community Partners. And really the conversation today is The quote that's up above here really describes the need for a regional vision for housing. So this does come directly out of our housing study. Our future vitality and economic competitiveness hinges on our ability to provide appealing, diverse housing options so that the region remains attractive to workers and employers as well as existing residents. And what we found in our study, if I can just remind folks really quickly, is we have a housing affordability issue here in our community. Over 36%, or approximately 36%, excuse me, of our households are cost burdened, which means they're paying 30% or more of their monthly income on housing. And when it comes to renters, we are at fully 49%. These numbers actually are from late last year. We do believe that that is now higher. And we talked a little bit in our housing study as well around the annual income that would be needed to be able to purchase a home in our community. At the time, we discussed that anybody who is making $60,000 or less is effectively shut out of owning a home in this community. That is still true, and because the price of homes have gone up, the average yearly wage necessary to be able to afford a home has also gone up. So it's now even above that $60,000 mark. So what did we find in terms of housing needs? Well, we know we need a wider variety of housing types to meet these demographic shifts and some of these affordable housing needs. One of the statistics that I think is startling is that over the past 15 years, the cost of homeownership for a single-family home has gone up 60%, while income has only gone up 17%. So the likelihood of our residents being able to afford homes that are similar to what are available today is going to continue to diminish. And we'd like to talk about something called missing middle housing, and I think a couple of other folks are going to talk to you about that as well. It represents a segment of housing types that can provide affordable workforce housing for our community, and there's an illustration at the bottom of the slide on that. And now I'd like to turn it over to Nancy Brown to start her presentation.
Hello. Is that on?
The light
Thank
should
you.
be on.
It's not on?
If the light's on.
Okay. For the record, my name is Nancy Brown. I'm the Director of Community Development for Charles Schwab Bank, headquartered in Nevada, and I've lived in Truckee, Meadows since 1979, where I began my banking career. I've been with Schwab since its inception and currently responsible for community development efforts that includes grants and services within the bank's CRA assessment areas of California and Nevada. And I'd like to provide some context about how we got where we were today. About 6 months ago, I was invited to about my third or fourth community group interested in working on affordable housing needs. These groups are all very passionate and knowledgeable about their clients and their market they serve. Within these different groups, I noticed duplication in efforts and a lack of understanding of what's going on outside their interest. Pretty common. And this is when I began to ask the question, what can we do to bring us together and to create a collaborative and collective plan to address affordable housing in our region? And then I asked if Schwab Bank were to invite enterprise communities, a national nonprofit expert and to help guide us in the community to create a comprehensive and affordable plan for our community, would this be of interest? The answer from everyone that I talked to was an astounding yes. There is a need for collaboration, and yes, they would be interested in working together to create a plan, and yes, it would be helpful to bring in enterprise. So the goal would be to include, and the goal of the plan would be to include the entire continuum of affordable housing needs in our region, from supportive housing, workforce housing, 120% of AMI and greater. Housing that doesn't exceed 30% of gross income, including transportation cost. More diverse types of affordable housing stock that are currently missing from our region, and the missing middle, as Kim explained. To date, as Kim explained, there's been 2 meetings and the Community Foundation community meeting. This has involved numerous hours of outside work from regular responsibilities from our community leaders, many of which are here today, that believe affordable housing is a crisis stage in our region. And I can tell you Schwab Bank is committed to this effort. Affordable housing is a high priority for our bank and to me personally. We are committed to support this effort and to find ways to retain and increase the amount of affordable housing inventory. Housing that fits the needs of all income levels of all individuals that choose to make Truckee Meadows their home. Schwab Bank has already made considerable and substantial contributions to this efforts. Through our existing relationships with enterprise, we were able to bring them to the table.
through numerous hours of time and coordinating efforts, and through financial support. In the past 6 months, Schwab has invested over 100 hours in time and over $40,000 towards this effort. It is committed to continue to do additional support in this effort now and through 2008. We're not alone in this work. Others have committed numerous hours and have provided financial support. We understand financial resources are limited to government agencies such as TMRPA, and that we need to look for outside of these budgets to make it happen. But as a community, and we can be more effective together in finding resources needed to increase and retain affordable housing in Truckee Meadows. As a citizen of Truckee Meadows, I'm here to ask that today TMPRA make this a priority to publicly support this effort. Our community, nonprofits, and profit businesses know we can do this work, and we can't do this work without the commitment of our supported and the support of our elected and public entities. Thank you, and at this time, I'd like to hand this over to Tony to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, my name is Tony Ramirez. I'm the Field Office Director for the Reno Area HUD Office, and I want to thank you all for inviting us all to present on affordable housing. I think you all have seen the headlines and the news stories about the impacts that we're starting to really experience with the lack of affordable housing in our region. I've been involved with housing and community development in the Truckee Meadows here for the past 13 years. So I'm not just with the federal agency, I'm also a member of the community. Although from my purview from HUD, we are here to support local initiatives. I was recruited actually by Nancy from Charles Schwab Bank last October because both of us were basically sitting on numerous meetings throughout the community that were all directed towards addressing affordable housing needs for various populations throughout the community. Nancy came up with the great idea and the resources to engage with enterprise community advisors to come in to help us basically with 3 key tasks to get this process started. We really wanted to focus on community engagement because in order to move forward, we needed to make sure that the community was behind us. So we set out identifying some of the key leaders in the community and had a convening back in January. It was attended by about 67 individuals representing different agencies and organizations throughout the community. We left that meeting with a lot of energy and nearly a 100% consensus that affordable housing was an issue that we needed to deal with on a regional basis. So with that behind us and our wind behind our sails, we re-engaged Enterprise, and they helped us basically kind of lay out a game plan, if you will, on next steps. Those next steps were basically to really consolidate a region-wide vision around affordable housing and housing issues in general. The second thing we needed to do, and this was some of the homework they gave us, is basically to identify a structure that we could build upon or create to basically help us with the planning phase of moving forward with the roadmap, but also identifying the infrastructure that's necessary to implement any strategies or recommendations that came out of this roadmap that we're starting to work on right now. So with that in mind, we basically held another convening, which we also invited various stakeholders to, and again, we had a lot of momentum behind us. But we realized at that point that we were kind of maybe getting the cart in front of the horse, and that's really why I'm here with you today. I really want to thank you all for taking the time and hearing us out, because I feel like we really need to be moving in concert. I know that there are different plans moving forward, both at the local jurisdictional level as well as the regional level for updating master plans, and they all have housing element components of those master plans. So really what we're trying to do today is make sure that we're moving this process forward in conjunction with you, in partnership with those master plan updates, because those master plans kind of set the stage for development that's going to be taking place in the future for now the next several years, 5 years. But this process that we're working on is, like I say, we're basing it on community support as well as your support to identify those strategies that we need to overcome some of the key barriers for developing affordable housing. We all know there have been a lot of plans and studies that have taken place over the past 8 to 10 years. Those plans, some of them are still relevant today, but the thing that we're lacking is that structure to implement any of those recommendations that came out of those plans. So as a representative from HUD, like I said, we're here to support the community on those initiatives that you're looking to undertake. HUD is actually right now in the process of kind of restructuring itself. Unfortunately, I can't say we're here bringing new resources to the table, but we are trying to bring new human resources to the table. We are restructuring ourselves internally to make sure that that the communities actually have access to regional and national subject matter experts. So if you're looking for expertise on affordable housing or different issues regarding affordable housing, we now have greater access to those technical assistance resources and training resources. And as we move forward, those are some of the things we're looking to offer right now through HUD, is basically training to the Technical Review Committee, the Home Consortium, and others that are in basically the chain of command of what we have right now with the regional governing agency. So we were looking forward to working with you. We're behind this effort 100%. Like I said, I've been involved with these housing issues here in this community for about the past 13 years. And I really feel that there's a lot of momentum right now, that there's a lot of energy that I haven't seen in many years. We've gone through that up cycle, the down cycle, and now we're back up again. And we're seeing some great opportunities with economic development and other activities here in the region. But if we don't address the housing issue, it's going to be a damper on those activities. So I really, again, encourage your support, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Appreciate your involvement and look forward to working together.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Ken Crater. I'm the chair of Operation Downtown. But more importantly, like all of you and everybody behind me, I'm just so passionate about our community. And it was interesting, in the first meeting in January, that was the day that we had 10 inches of snow on the ground, yet still probably 90+% of the people that had signed up for our first Affordable Housing Roadmap meeting made it through the snow to the meeting. It was a great meeting. But then in the second meeting, what was of interest is when we got around to talking about how the leadership of this group is going to function, a lot of us felt very strongly that the governing board needs to be highly involved in the leadership group in some fashion. But unfortunately, there was a lot of other people in the room that didn't feel that way, and I believe it's because they were concerned that if the political bodies are involved, maybe things aren't going to get done as quickly as they need to. And I also believe that Paul Bernard with Enterprise feels very strongly that we need to have leadership from the governing board, and he made that known to us. So we reconvened the advanced planning group, and here we are today. But I think at the end of the day, we now all understand how important it is to have your leadership from the governing board, because if we don't, this thing isn't going to happen. And this is obviously a very high-profile issue that affects our entire community, from the poorest to the workforce to the business people. Because if we don't have affordable housing, it's going to negatively impact our ability to grow our community in a positive fashion, because good things are happening. We're bringing good jobs, higher-paying jobs to our community, and in the end, I believe it's going to be very good for the Truckee Meadows. So I can tell you that myself, and I know a whole lot of people behind me in this room, are absolutely ready to roll up their sleeves and make this happen, to work with the governing board and your staff. And I know we're also going to do our best to continue to go out into the community and make sure we educate the community and explain the importance of working towards this and creating affordable housing, because I also know that your constituents have to support this in order for you to support it. And we will work as hard as we possibly can to all help make this happen. Thank you. And now I'm going to introduce Sharon Zadra.
Thank you, Mr. Crater.
Madam Chair, one of the members of my board has a pressing schedule. Can we slip her public comment in and then my presentation? Thank you. Kristen?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. Kristen McNeil, Deputy Superintendent for the Washoe County School District, and I do appreciate you allowing me to speak. We have our North Star graduation starting approximately 3 minutes. But thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. This is a critically important topic for the school district, as well as for the Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities. Again, for the record, Kristen McNeil. We know that affordable housing is critical to our community and its long-term vitality. It's also for the Washoe County School District, affordable housing and a substantive increase in inventory is important for our families and employees. As the largest employer in Northern Nevada, we must be able to recruit the best and brightest teachers and support staff for our students and schools. Having affordable housing and inventory is a recruiting tool that we use and that we must continue to use. You see, we lose out to communities that have affordable housing in different regions and communities across this country, and that's a negative for us as a community. We also know that with over 3,000 homeless youth and children, that providing safe and secure housing is of the utmost importance. As a former teacher and principal, I can tell you that the basic needs for housing for our students is critical. It also makes an important point when we talk about what is right and what we need to do as a community. We need to be a community that believes in making affordable housing a priority for the benefit and sustaining the health, the welfare, and the well-being of our employees, our students, and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil. Could you quickly, before you dash out, could you fill out a public comment card real quickly on your way out? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And former colleagues, it's an interesting and exhilarating experience to be on this side and not back there with you. Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities is a somewhat new organization to our community. It's been evolving for a little over 2 years and was the result of the Community Health Needs Assessment that was developed for 15 through 17. And for the first time, entities that had never worked together that have common issues and data analysis that need to be performed came together, that being Renown and the Washoe County Health District, to prepare that report. And from that, with the assistance of the Federal Reserve Bank, Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities has come to our region, something that's very common in major municipality areas and has been for about 20 years. We work to increase the access to services and address the inequities in our community that result in health disparities, to create a culture of health, and to enhance quality of life and well-being in the Truckee Meadows. We engage diverse thought leaders and influencers to collectively shape a healthier community. And as we've heard in the presentation thus far, and you are well aware, sustainable housing is a key influence on the health of our community. Home prices, of course, have doubled since 2012, and most importantly, that impacts the majority of people in the zip code areas that we are concentrating on. Again, from data research, 50% of the households are rent burdened and are paying more than 30% of their income for housing. Down payment assistance is minimal at best, and organizations providing housing rehabilitation are too few. So we have an overall shortage of affordable housing compounded by an insufficient supply of different types of housing to meet our area's diverse needs. More than 50,000 new housing units are needed by 2035, within 20 years, and the units must be affordable. So today, we have in front of us the need for a comprehensive, collaborative, regional strategy. And we've got the community commitment. You've heard several references to the multiple meetings that have been had. You see many faces and committed partners who are with us to work on this. We have raised, you've heard reference, we've raised, with not a whole lot of energy yet, almost $100,000 already to commit to this endeavor that we have. And within the next 4 months, we will likely see another 50 to 60. And again, that's just our first approach. We as a community have certainly experienced what regional collaboration can do for us and continues to do for us with the work of the RTC, flood planning and mitigation, the district health, the CAC, TUMWA, A regional strategy is built on partnerships, and we're proposing to you, it is time for Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities and the Regional Plan Governing Agency team with Enterprise so that we're combining our local expertise and leveraging it with the national expertise that Enterprise has proven again and again. Just this morning, I had a conversation, as did Kim, with the second in command in Oakland, one of the areas, and you'll hear in the presentation from Enterprise about the work that they've done with multiple cities, including Oakland. But we wanted to hear from the communities that they've worked with to learn about what was best, what was Enterprise able to do for you. And Claudia Capio was overwhelming in what she explained to us. She said that they understand the issues, that they put reality to the numbers, that they verify that what we're doing is what will work. They help us to connect those dots. They bring proportionality to their work. They bring capital resources and the understanding of how difficult it is to find new and creative ways to leverage those dollars, and they understand the regional challenges. That was just from one of the many people that they've worked with. Our individual bodies are already doing, I know from personal experience, you know more current, are doing remarkable work to address the needs that we have relating to the health of our community and in particular affordable housing. Each of you have priorities that are similar and some are distinct. And if we align all of those into a comprehensive regional strategy, we will be able to develop plans that will help us to achieve successes. We have the opportunity to collaboratively identify solutions to address and correct the growing need that we have for affordable housing in our community. Collectively, we recognize that there are diverse populations that are seriously impacted by the lack of safe and sustainable and affordable housing options in our community. The stress of unaffordable and unstable housing contributes seriously to poor health outcomes and has a serious negative impact on education and our economic stability. We have the opportunity today to get this right for our residents and to become an example of solutions and not bad problems. So the other partner that we are proposing to you, in addition to Regional Plan Governing Board Agency and TMH Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities, is to work with Enterprise, and we have Paul Bernard and Francis Wong with us to give you some of the details of how we can move forward, and we hope that you will endorse that concept.
Thank you, Ms. Sadra.
Good afternoon. Sharon, thank you for those kind words. We remain humbled to be in front of you this morning, that you would invite us into your community to be a part of this conversation, to partner with you in terms of that conversation. For the record, and I'm Paul Bernard, I'm with Enterprise Community Partners, and will be joined shortly by Francis Wong. And Francis is going to probably take us through more of the detail in terms of our approach to a regional sort of housing strategy. My role here really is to give you a short sense of who Enterprise is and how we're focused in on the affordable housing challenge within the nation. I must say that we are excited. We're really excited about being here. Anytime we can partner up with a community that is as energized as your community around affordable housing issues, it's near and dear to our hearts, in part because we understand the role of affordable housing, not only in terms of providing basic necessary needs for individuals, but what also it represents with respect to opportunities for those individuals to move up and out, opportunities for communities to grow and become more resilient, opportunities for regions to become a lot more economically stable. So we understand that. And so part of what we attempt to do, our big, bold, hairy, audacious goal is to end housing insecurity within a generation. And that's big and that's bold. And we need partners like you in order to see that vision forward. Now, the other piece of that vision is to then be able to connect that affordable housing actually to opportunities so it can work. Now, just very briefly in terms of enterprise, we've been around for a while, since 1982. For those of you all who are familiar with Jim Rouse, who is the mall developer and also the creator of Columbia, which is a planned community between Baltimore and DC. Jim Rouse started Enterprise with this vision of growing people and growing people within a community context, whether it's a rural context or whether it's an urban context or a suburban context or even a mall context. How do you grow people? And so that's part of who we are, and that's part of what we do. Again, we've been around for a while. We have about 500 plus employees across the country. We've invested over $26 billion in affordable housing, creating 365 million units across the country. And as you look at the slide, I would say that we are divided up into providing solutions, policy, and capital as it relates to answering and addressing the affordable housing crisis across the country. With respect to advisors is the group that I run. We are the public consulting group within Enterprise, and we travel across the country. I think last year we've touched about 320 some odd communities, large cities, small cities, cities in between, and we have a 16 member team to do that. So I mention that to say what we bring to the table is a breadth of experience. I think what we bring to the table are proven concepts that have worked across the country. And so that gives you a sense, that will give you a sense of how we can look at what you're doing, compare it to sort of best practices around. So having said that, what I would like to do is bring Francis up to run us through some of the details on how we approach this regional housing strategy. And I think I'll stay up here to hop in on some details of the projects we've worked on.
Sure. For the record, my name is Frances Wong with Enterprise Community Partners, Enterprise Advisors. Does this clicker work? Let's see.
Okay.
All right, so great. So we're here to talk to you about the need for a long-term comprehensive housing strategy. And what is that exactly? We like to think of it as a plan that sets affordable, actionable goals and strategies for the next 5 to 10 years to address a broad range of existing and future housing needs, but viewing housing as a key component within the macroeconomic infrastructure and as a bridge to higher levels of opportunity. So that's a lot of words. So why is that important here? So we see housing as a major component for growth and resilience. And to quote the great TMRPA housing study again, the region's future vitality and economic competitiveness hinges on our ability to provide diverse, appealing housing options so that the region remains attractive to workers, employers, as well as existing residents. So we would hope that the housing strategy would capture and understand existing and future housing needs, conditions in the market. As we know, currently there's a lack of an overall supply of affordable housing, including workforce housing, which is creating affordability issues for low and moderate income individuals and households, both renters and owners. We can also look at it a case, I think, as Nancy mentioned, of the missing middle of housing, that there's a whole range of housing that is currently not really here, and they could be townhouses, cottages, apartments, duplexes that could be more affordable to a workforce that would be moving here or already here. There's also future housing needs. As we know, in the future, there's going to be demographic and socioeconomic shifts here in this region. So it would be really important for the plan to help develop policies and strategies that anticipate these trends and needs. For example, we're going to have aging baby boomers. We're going to need housing for millennials as they age. There's might be actually the housing plan states that there's going to be a growing Latino population. So all of these changes are going to have implications for the range of housing types and price points that will be needed here for this region. It's also important because we hoped a comprehensive housing strategy would help to foster better cooperation and alignment of efforts, resources, and strategies, refine partnership and collaborative initiatives here in the region. We'd hope that the plan would not only look at strategies to address these existing and future needs I just talked about, but look at also the resources, the financial mechanisms, and the partnerships and actions that need to take place to make these strategies successful. I know we've done a barrier studies, barriers to affordable housing in 2006, but now it's time to move from, yes, we know what the barriers are, to what can we do about them. So this will be more of an implementation plan. We also know that the regional plan will be updated this coming year, so this is really a perfect time for us to start undertaking this work, so the two efforts can really speak to each other and that they can be aligned. And another important thing we want to say is that this housing strategy is not going to be a static document, that it's going to be a dynamic document that takes into consideration other components of opportunity, like Paul mentioned, such as access to education, transportation, health services, and jobs, and how they all relate to housing. We want this to be a living, breathing document and a formula for hopefully the region to work together. So the approach that we want to advocate is a regional approach. What does that mean exactly? That means the cities of Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County would work together across jurisdictions to address housing and other related, closely related issues, but also understanding that there's a greater context of this 5-county region that's outside of just Washoe County that we would need to engage with them and also bring them into the fold. So why is this regional approach important for developing this plan? So there will be opportunities to grow and better sustain the total pie, and working together will help things to be more cost effective and allow for more efficient use of our limited resources, such as precious and diminishing federal funds, like Tony just talked about, CDBG and home. They're limited, so we want to better leverage them and use them in a way that's effective. We want to track, anticipate, and plan for resources that are coming down the line. Maybe look at programs that can benefit and apply across jurisdictions, and sources of capital for development of projects and for infrastructure improvements. We want to increase levels of cooperation rather than competition. Prioritize. Here's a common story that we hear in some communities is that projects get stalled because entities are competing for low-income housing tax credit, and they wish that there had been more cooperation and planning behind the prioritization of projects. So we'd hope that a plan would help to address and look at priorities and projects of each jurisdictions and kind of see how they fit in a bigger regional context. And taking this regional approach, we'd hope to complement and leverage the strengths and opportunities of each jurisdiction individually to attract and be able to respond as a region to bigger and new opportunities that may come. This would also position the region to be more proactive rather than reactionary in crafting its own long-term goals and visions. And as we know, there's already a system here, or it's already set up for working together like this. You guys sitting right there, the governing board, the regional governing board. So this work would be starting from a very solid foundation. As Paul mentioned, we've done some work in other places. So we've done some regional initiatives, some collaboration and collective impact partnership work, as well as housing strategy and plan development. I'm going to have Paul come up and just talk a little bit more about our regional initiatives, because I think that is really applicable to our conversation here.
So really quickly on the Salinas work, we were asked to come in and really focus in on workforce development for the city of Salinas. But once we got in, it was more than just Salinas. It was the surrounding areas, the surrounding cities. So we incorporated all of those areas into a larger regional strategy. With respect to Lake Charles, Louisiana, over the next 5 to 10 years, they're expecting maybe $120 billion worth of new investment in terms of natural gas facilities, and that's going to disrupt the whole community. We were asked to come in not only to work with the city, but to pull in all of the surrounding parishes to work on both housing strategy as well as a strategy for schools. And then lastly, this AFH stands for Assessment of Fair Housing, affirmatively furthering fair housing rule. In Kansas City, we actually consulted with HUD in terms of how to put together that rule, and we did some of the trainers on that. But we were asked by Kansas City, well, okay, how do we pull in the region so that we don't look at it as just what we're trying to measure in Kansas City itself. So those are some of the ways in which we've worked together with regard to a regional context. I would say normally, whether we go working inside of a city and doing work, we are always trying to figure out how to pool, how to leverage resources, and trying to figure out how those resources connect to each other. Thanks, Rance. Oh. You want me to do this one as well? Yes. One of the places, so one of the things hopefully I mentioned earlier, we don't view any of the engagements as sort of a consulting engagement. We really view it as a partnership. And so when I talked earlier about enterprise and all the bits and pieces of enterprise, we will expose all those bits and pieces of enterprise to you. And here are just some of the subsets of things that we have on the capital side. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. Needless to say that this is just a small subset of some of the things that we have within our own system. What we're also going to look to do in this engagement would be to economize the resources that you're currently using, whether it's layering on a certain financing, whether it's trying to figure out new financing or creating new tools. We're being asked in a place like Durham, North Carolina, to create a housing trust and to layer that into some other things, or whether it's improving the types of relationships that you already have, whether it's with the State Housing Finance Agency or perhaps in partnership with the folks from SWAB, with the Federal Home Loan Bank Board. We've been having different conversations with folks about how to do that. And what would be helpful is if there is a document that shows how folks are working together, it's our view that then you attract a different level of resources that could be scaled appropriately. So that's why we believe that this is perfect timing for you to be considering how to put together a larger strategy that sends the correct signal out to the marketplace so you can begin to attract the types of resources that you'll need going forward.
Thank you, Paul. The next slide is a little bit theoretical, so bear with me. So we want to talk just very quickly about what elements need to be in place for this planning effort for developing a comprehensive housing strategy for the region to be successful. First, we're here to talk to you today because we really need political will here. For this whole thing to work, we need support and commitment from top leadership, such as yourselves, who will champion and move this work forward. We need to establish a common agenda and agree that housing is a priority and the common issue that everyone will work together. We need to establish shared measurement so that the jurisdictions will need to determine key indicators and milestones to measure the progress and success of this effort. We need to establish mutually reinforcing activities so that everyone will start viewing their individual challenges and opportunities from a systems level, from a regional level, start outlining activities that would contribute to the achievement of the common agenda. Here's an important one, a system for partnership and collaboration. I think Ken talked about it a little bit, the establishment of a formal planning structure to drive the development of this plan and hopefully oversee its future implementation. A very key part of this is public engagement, because we need to make sure that whatever we're doing here is not in a vacuum, that the residents and the public of this community has a chance for input, and that they would play an active role in crafting the housing plan and strategy that makes sense for the community. At the center of it all, we need to have continuous communication between all stakeholders, all key stakeholders, elected officials, and the public. So this brings us to our key considerations that we want you to think about here today. We believe that these are key things that you should think about as a board if we want to ensure the probability of success for this work. That working together is the logical next step following the housing study that the board approved in December last year. That this work leverages the timing of the regional plan update and utilizes momentum from recent efforts such as the Housing Forum, the Community Conversation on Workforce Housing. So all of these efforts build up to this. So really, we're here to ask for commitment and recognition from the Regional Planning Governing Board that working together to develop a comprehensive housing plan for the region is a priority, that each jurisdiction will provide input in the development of the goals and strategies, and that each jurisdiction will be accountable for the future implementation of the plan. We strongly believe that getting your commitment to undertake this work to develop a comprehensive housing plan and strategy will be a major foundational step in developing a vision for housing and sustainable growth for this community for the next 20 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Ken, we turn it back to you.
Thanks very much.
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you so much. And just to flesh out a little bit more around what the engagement with enterprise would look like, we've developed a draft scope of work that would include a few phases, including assessment of current resources, programs, policies, the development of this regional housing strategy as we've discussed, the integration into the 2017 regional plan draft, and assisting in developing a collaboration process as well as some education and capacity building. And we think that really the opportunity today before the RPGB is to engage with this effort that results in the development of housing policies for the regional plan update. We're very clear that we need to develop policies as part of the update. The opportunity to partner together with a group that has already done some work and has the opportunity and ability to bring forward some funding to support that, in addition to the national expertise that Enterprise Community Partners has, is a real opportunity, and we are looking at a concurrent time frame for this effort and the regional plan update so that the policies would be adopted with the update itself. So again, the partnership looks like a partnership with Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities and Enterprise Community Partners. The opportunity to ensure the availability of affordable workforce housing. I think everyone here in this community, in this room, understands how important that is. We'd have the opportunity to work on this today if the governing board so chooses. And we have a recommendation to consider the information provided today. Please provide any feedback to staff and direct staff to partner with Healthy Communities on developing a comprehensive regional housing strategy, if that is your wish. And we have a possible motion on the next slide. The other way. And I think any of us are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions, comments. Mr. Lawson.
How much? There's got to be a price tag here.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
So the conversation around the price tag has been somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000, something that would be raised within the community and would not come out of the Regional Planning Governing Board budget. It would be something that would allow us to enhance the regional plan update budget.
And where do you propose to raise 300 million?
300,000.
Excuse me.
I would like to defer that
Where do you
conversation.
propose to raise 300 million, too?
So two different questions. We'll talk later. I would really love to defer that question to Sharon Zadra from Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities.
Thank you, Member Lawson. As I mentioned, we've had a working group on this for kind of a short window of time, and we've already raised the almost 100,000. We're at 90, and we have another projected, just with two other grants that are out that are very likely to be received, will come in at about another 50 or 60. That same working group is continuing to work forward. We have other multiple sources identified. It'll be more challenging than the first, the lower hanging fruit was, but we are committed. It's a working group of public citizens who have access to some of the public funding, through HUD and some of the state agencies where our money has come from already, the banks. We have tentative commitment from some of the local business types that believe in this. So it will be our responsibility. Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities didn't grab onto this opportunity until we knew that the funding sources would be there, because we're just very lean and mean. We've barely been able to get ourselves up and going. And in that short time, we were able to at least raise enough money to bring on some additional staff assistance for us, some expertise to help us go after this money. And she has incredible experience doing that. Elizabeth Moore will be working with us to continue that operation. So it's our responsibility to identify and seek and achieve that funding goal.
So you're expecting, because you're well aware of the budgets of both cities, that
Certainly,
just not an extra 300,000 laying around,
we understand that.
or 300 million.
We understand. Well, that one would be a bigger challenge. I'm not sure we would take that one on.
So you're
But
anticipating to be private funds raised?
Not entirely. With the partnership with Enterprise, they bring with us opportunities to leverage, and they have resources at the national level and how to kind of re-identify ways to use dollars that we've not yet been able to achieve yet in our community currently.
What we would call as OPM, other people's money.
That's a good description.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Ms. Breckes?
Yeah, I want to thank all for coming here today and your presentations. I guess, my questions, thoughts are, we're the land use planning body, regional, and we have a land use plan to deliver. And of course, housing is always an element, but I really want to focus on getting that product done by this body and managing that. And that's a theme I've been talking about for quite a while. And it's not exclusive of housing in terms of even if it didn't have a housing element. The seminal 1998 Bank of America study that talked about the costs of sprawl in California really set the conversation for land use relationship to housing. And we know that sprawl forms of development are costly for us to serve and also costly for housing products. It's not to say that you're not going to be building on the greenfield, but infill techniques are really what I think the regional plan needs to carve out so we can see that market rate housing being developed. And I don't want to see us become project managers of an effort that is more narrow than our scope and what we need to do. We are getting hit at our planning commission agendas and our city council agendas on a lot of land use pressures right now that I feel the regional plan is not providing us the answers and directives on, and we need to get there. So having said that, I think regional housing strategy would be good. I'm a planner. I believe in process, and public engagement is almost as important as the product that's delivered at the end of the day. And as a matter of fact, I was talking to our city manager today about a very detailed rulemaking on qualified census tracts for HUD. So, I think we run our federal programs very helpfully, but very successfully and efficiently. But I think there is room. I also think there's room for education to, highlight the issue. And I think, frankly, the planning effort would be good, but I'd like to see someone else do it. But the conversation, and I think one that local governments need to get out there very much, is there's two sides of this equation, and the other side is incomes and wages. And we've done enough on our data to know that we're shadowing as much nationally that incomes and wages are not rising, and local governments need to stop taking all the blame for housing product when it's other levels of government need to address that very complex economic situation. So I see a lot of topics that could come out. I'm just uncomfortable and want to hear from my colleagues on how much of a focus this is of this small staff and resources to do this regional housing strategy when I see a whole lot of land use pressures that need to proceed. So I don't know if Mr. Executive Director has an answer for that or not.
Do you want to address that? Kim?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In terms of the conversation around, I think the question is the resources, the impact around resources.
And would you manage a are you envisioning that Truckee Meadows staff would be the project manager of a scope of work with the enterprise?
I actually see it within partnership with the Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities. I think what TMRPA can bring to the table is our technical expertise, our understanding around the housing in the community, and the data piece. From that perspective, we also have a very robust update to give you on the regional plan update in the next item as well. And I certainly understand your concerns. I think part of the conversation that we've been having in-house is teasing out these particular topics from each other, and how does that happen successfully. Either way, I think that this organization should be in the room strictly for the regional plan update conversation. So, but we see this as a real opportunity for partnership, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McKenzie?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And there's none of us that don't know this is a major issue, and I know from the city of Reno's part, we've been struggling with a process to address it. And there's a lot of different ideas floating around, but nobody to consolidate those ideas. And I think the idea of getting the parties that are interested in solving this solution together under a leadership a solution leadership that has had experience and has been successful in other areas is a great idea. Again, I'm like Mr. Lawson. It's what's it going to cost us and how are we going to fund it? If this is going to come from private funding, I think we all benefit from the process. I think it helps all of our agencies. But we can't sell our agencies individually to support it. And we've got to go back to, this has got to have a buy-in from Washoe County, it's got to have a buy-in from the city of Sparks, it's got to have a buy-in from the city of Reno, that if there's a plan out there and we're moving forward with it, that we're all on the same sheet of music and willing to move forward with it. So while I'm willing to commit that we could take portions of this and put into the regional plan, it comes down to are our home agencies willing to support that and move forward and make it all work. So we have to figure out something, because what we've been doing hasn't worked. So I'm willing to try something new, and if this is something that can get us over the hump and get some affordable housing in the community, because we're definitely not going to change the direction of the imported jobs in here. We're going to continue to get growth in jobs that need more affordable housing. And if we don't figure out a way to meet that demand, then we're going to have a bigger problem. And today's person that is struggling to stay in his home is tomorrow's homeless person if we don't address this issue.
Ms. Stewart?
Oh, sure. Thank you very much. Really appreciated the presentation. Have heard a version of it a couple times in the last couple years because we have had such an active group working on downtown housing, because housing has been a component of this regional planning process, because housing has been part of our Reimagine Reno. So we've been hearing these conversations in many rooms. I had an opportunity to go to the Housing Forum as well, and we heard a different kind of a cut and take on that. So my question, I guess, today, or first a statement is, I think everybody at this podium is very committed to this issue. We know it's a very top issue. If we didn't know, we'd read about it almost every week in the paper, right? If we missed those bulletins or those memos. But I guess my question right here is, the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency is a planning agency. And I think that's how they're structured and the thought process. And in my mind, more than a doing agency. You know, in other words, you're not really an agency that builds stuff or makes new things other than, for example, models or databases that would support the planning effort, to me. But there are doing agencies related to housing in our region, and one of those is the Reno Housing Authority, which my understanding is a component, has membership from a wide variety of people in Washoe County. And so I guess what I'm just wondering about is it right place, right time? A little bit towards what some of my other colleagues have said is just, I think there's no question about the commitment. Is this the right place, given what's on the plate and what the mission of this organization is? And are there other partnerships, maybe with a Reno Housing Authority or other group that might be better? And I don't want that to be misinterpreted, that we're not interested. I wouldn't be making the time to go to all those meetings and extra meetings if I wasn't interested. I just, I want to make sure it's the right place and the right time. If this is the right place and the community says, no, it should happen right here at regional planning, and they should reach out and go do the housing model, then that's something I want to hear. And the last point I want to make is really a question, which, although it was a very comprehensive presentation, I'm a little bit unclear on what the model is. I mean, I heard you speak about, I wrote down all the numbers of the 500 employees, 296 million, 360 million units, but I'm still not really sure what the model is. Do you go get funding and you build partnerships and you go build the housing, or, is that it? I mean, is that it in a nutshell?
So we're not going to build the housing, although enterprise could be a part of that once the plan is put in place. We're really here to help support the process of putting together that regional housing strategy. And that process, I can speak to what that process looks like if that's helpful. That process will end up focusing in on each of the jurisdictions independently, so that I don't know where that slide was in terms of the actual actual sort of programming out of how we think we're going to go through this. But part of it's going to be, let's understand what we're working with. And let's understand where the priorities are today. Let's understand where there are conflicts. Let's understand where there are intersections. And our goal is to make sure at the end of the day that we are leaving you with a roadmap, a plan, a strategy that will ultimately sort of increase the probability of success. So part of that's going to be minimizing the places where there is conflict and disagreement. It could be around land use, and increasing the probability, or increasing the places where there's intersection. And our thoughts are, if we can have, again, I said earlier, if we can have a single strategy that sends a different signal to the market, then hopefully what we're sending is something to developers at a different scale. We're beginning to have conversations with institutions that can provide the capital, again, at a different scale. We'll ask for different partnerships with the Housing Finance Agency. We'll ask them to allocate perhaps some of their balance sheet to things like down payment assistance. We can have structured partnerships with the Federal Home Loan Bank Board because they can see that you guys have organized yourselves regionally. So what we're providing for you is like a game plan. If in fact you want to tap into other parts of enterprise to come in and actually be involved on the financing or be involved on the development, that's something that could happen later, and that's your choice. But that's what we're doing. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I mean, kind of, I think you're saying you're more of an organizing function and streamlining and smoothing off the rough surfaces and making sure we're all going in the same direction, which I really admire and I think is essential to success, right? You all have to be bought into a single plan. So I guess my question, I mean, I really looking at Ken, I mean, is that the lack that we have? Is that what's missing here? You know, I've taken a lot of notes because and some of them started out with just, well, anyway, it doesn't matter, but could you just answer that question?
So this is a great, important discussion, and it ties in with what Member Brecka said, is I've been preaching for years, too, that we need a solid, comprehensive plan that minimizes the amount of infrastructure, maximizes access to transit, right? All the things that are smart about growing our community to minimize the cost of the community, maximize access to resources. But at the end of the day, all the planning in the world won't work if we don't address how we bring in that affordable element of housing. Because we can have a great plan, but unless part of the plan addresses how we're going to go out and get resources and money to encourage developers to come in and build that affordable housing, to maximize the amount of available resources, to use the expertise that folks like Enterprise had, it's really not a very good plan. And so that's why I think it's so important that your organization be involved in the leadership role. And we get the fact that you have limited resources with staff, right? And that's why Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities has brought in somebody like Elizabeth Moore, while we're raising $300,000, so we can make sure that we've got the available staff and the expertise and partnering with Enterprise to make sure that we don't overextend your staff. But at the end of the day, you're the one governing body that has elected representatives from Reno Sparks and Washoe County. And so I think that's why we all feel so strongly that the buck sort of stops here, and we need your leadership to move this thing forward.
Well, I just want to compliment you for making this stop and making this visit and making us part of it. And what I think I hear you saying is you think that you need Kim, regional planning, to be part of this to be successful. It may not be that regional planning is taking the lead, but they're certainly participating in putting this plan together.
Exactly. It's going to be a partnership. But if you look at the expertise on your staff, the access to data and resources, and frankly, the housing plan that Kim and her staff put together is first rate. There's so much important data in there already. So we're not going to go out and reinvent the wheel. You know, we don't need any more studies. There are so many studies sitting on the shelf, and the story I like to tell is when I went to work for the city of Reno, my boss brought me in the study room and said, Ken, here's our room full of studies. If you need information, it's probably in here, right? And so we're going to access what's been done, and we have so many different organizations involved, like the Reno Housing Authority. They're a huge component. And in fact, a bunch of us are already working with Reno Housing Authority about about creating a new 26-unit facility potentially for seniors or Housing First model. So all those groups are involved in this effort, and we're going to be tapping into every one of them. There's a fantastic organization, for example, that Councilman Delgado is involved in on youth and youth homelessness, right? The Builders is working on code issues and land use issues that we could look at to possibly start reducing the cost of construction of housing. So we're going to bring all those together into this comprehensive plan, but I really think it needs to be part of the regional plan, because again, then it falls under your leadership to make sure this can happen. Because you know, we are at a stage in our community where if we get this right, we already live in one of the greatest communities in the nation. We all know that. But if we can figure out affordable housing, how awesome our community will be. If we don't, we're going to go towards the Bay Area, where there's no chance of affordable housing. And the good news is we're not the Bay Area, we're not Chicago, we're still small enough that if we all work together as a region, we can solve this issue now for the long term.
Member Bobson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess just to sort of offer some other thoughts based on some of the skepticism that I've heard from my colleagues. I mean, I believe Mr. Crater made the argument pretty effectively as to why this effort and this sort of a study would need to be part of the regional plan. And I had some opportunity to spend time with Paul and Francis prior to the meeting, and I think it's important to note that core to the mission of their organization is not just providing consultation services and all their different services to address affordable housing, but also looking at affordable housing as sort of step one, right? It's not just about putting boxes on the ground and getting people in them, I think is what kind of how Paul related it, but just using that as the platform for future prosperity for those folks, and a broader vision of what it means for a prosperous community that begins with affordable housing and opportunity. And so not just is it important, I think, for this to go into the regional plan, but I would also offer that, and I certainly hear and share Councilman Breckes's desire for haste in the update of the regional plan, and we are going to be doing that. And we'll be certainly discussing that in the next agenda item. But look, there's no secret that we're going to have some tough conversations and choices ahead of us when we get to that regional plan. But if you understand that the core question at the start of the update is, we got 125,000 people coming here in the next 20 years. How are we going to do that? The affordable housing question and prism is very important to that question, how you answer that question. And so if not just the staff has the involvement with this issue and with all of the community partners, but if this governing board is sort of the convening point for that discussion and consideration, that gives us something that we can hang our hats on and seek that consensus update to the regional plan based on the product that comes out of it. I'm not saying that this study is going to be, the big foundation for the regional plan update when it comes to those tough land use choices that we're going to have to be making, but it is a big part of it. So I am supportive of moving ahead with this, provided we can sync it up. And I've had some tough questions for Kim as to what exactly that calendar looks like and how that does get synced up so that we don't take our eye off the ball of the regional plan update. But I'm confident that the staff and frankly that this governing board can do that.
Okay. Mr. Lawson.
Well, I think this kind of goes right along with when we started the Smarter Regions project. Is this body is the keeper of the information. This is where it should be, so that everybody can come to this body and figure out what's going on in every jurisdiction. And I think this falls right in with that. I also, and this is not any kind of disparaging remark on staff, I don't think we're 100% employed, and I don't think this is really going to take away anything from what we're currently doing. I think we're going to be just fine in the whole deal. I like the idea. Affordable housing, for me, is a big deal because I see this gap. In 2006, our median house income was around $49,000. 2017, our median house income is around $52,000. So in 11 years, we have not gone up at about $3,000 per household. Now we're bringing in all these high-tech jobs. They're going to be in the higher wage earners. We're going to have this missing middle, and we saw it on the slide. We're going to have the missing middle where people that can't afford a house become homeless, then go in the system, and now we're going to be supporting with their tax dollars in the long term. So I think it's extremely important for the affordable housing aspect to be in here. I think this is the right place because we are the keepers of the knowledge. And we, as a group of elected officials, are the ones who go back to our particular bodies and explain to our colleagues who may not be in the audience, like most of the Spark City Council, is that this is the reason why this is a good idea, and we get consensus that way.
Ms. Burke-Bigley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's so important for the amended and updated regional plan to include every aspect that's important to the growth of this community. Obviously, we have to look at lots of factors, and it is true that we are a planning agency rather than a development agency, but it seems to me without housing and a plan for housing involved in this regional plan, as has just been pointed out by Board Member Bobzien and also Board Member Lawson, that we've lost a certain factor of our updated regional plan that is going to be so important. And frankly, we've tried workforce housing or affordable housing, however you want to try. We've tried a number of things over the years, and we haven't been very effective. And I think maybe it's time to think outside of the box and bring in a lot of these ideas that were laid before us today. So thank you for the presentation. It was excellent. And I totally support this board being involved.
Thank you. I would like to also say that I'm excited, especially after having met with Paul and Francis and having a little deeper conversation on what they do and what their vision is. And they bring something that so much knowledge, so much experience, so many resources, and some of it's outside of the box, especially for our region. It's opportunities that maybe we haven't even thought of, and putting it all together. And I liked the fact that Paul, two things, that when he talked about how do you come in and work with 3 different jurisdictions and make sure that again, on this board, and my feeling has always been we are one region and everything we do influences each other, and we've got to work together to resolve so many of these, and obviously this being probably the top issue is affordable housing. And I like the fact he said that he would go to each jurisdiction individually, so that he would come to Sparks and to Reno and to the county and kind of look at where we are and what our needs are and where our areas are for housing, what kind of housing we have, what's being built, and individually look at the 3 jurisdictions and where, and then move together on a regional scope of work that we could do together. And I think that their experience and looking and their conversations of what they've done in Oakland and in other communities, I've never felt we need to reinvent the wheel. We go to other places and we look at what worked and see if we can replicate it here or if we can tweak it to what would work for this region. And I think the timing is perfect for this body with the regional plan update. And it is, we are planning, but part of that, the big part of that planning is land use. It's looking at the studies and data that we've gotten in the last year, everything from building inside the McCarran Loop and the cost differences to do that. It's the infill we're looking at. It's older neighborhoods. It's our industrial areas that we haven't even tapped into for other uses. So many possibilities as we look at the regional plan update that this fits in. The timing could not be more perfect. And I think when we get to the next agenda item, I felt really good about what the timing, pretty aggressive timetable for the regional plan update and for this cooperation. And I really appreciate the fact that in partnership, working with Enterprise and their expertise, working with Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities, and everyone else that we bring to the table, I think it would be a true partnership and collaboration, a regional vision and strategy that we collaborate together on, and I'm excited about what we can do. I think the possibilities are pretty exciting for our region, and I look forward to it. Do I have any other comments before we move on? Excuse me?
Move to approve staff recommendation.
Okay,
Make a comment.
I do, we'll have comment after a motion by Member McKenzie, and a second by Member Burke-Pickler, and I have
One comment.
one more comment. Ms. Stewart?
Thank you. And I think it's important to clarify, because I haven't had a chance to meet with you guys. I have that scheduled for tomorrow. I'm so looking forward to it. I just wanted to mention that, over the last 2.5 years, I have worked to get 4 affordable housing projects in Ward 2. Seniors, veterans, workforce, and 60% AMI. I've gone to extra workshops. I've done just about everything that I can do as an individual to get my arms around this and actually make housing appear. And I agree with you, it's a very intractable issue for us right now, that those are all developer-driven, with a HUD location and so on and so forth, and it's very much in an existing model. So the opportunity for you to bring in new ideas and new models, I would highly welcome that. And so I just wanted to say I feel a little at disadvantage, because I haven't had the chance to have the hour meeting and find out more about what you do and how you do it. But everything I've heard here today makes me very excited about the opportunity. So just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor. However, before we take a vote, I do have public comment. I have several public comments. I'd like to remind everyone the maximum they have is 3 minutes. And our first speaker is Jennifer Crow, followed by Nancy Brown. And who is this? Oh, that's a date. Okay.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. My name is Jennifer Crow. I'm the Northern Nevada Director for Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. I've submitted some comments for the record, but I'd just like to say, first off, that addressing the issue of workforce and affordable housing in our area is critical and one that the Senator is focused on. We had an affordable housing roundtable in April where we brought a lot of folks together, most of whom are in this room today, to talk about this issue, and we are available and here to provide whatever support and assistance we can in this effort. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Those programs roll
Nancy Brown, followed by Chris Askin.
What's that?
Nancy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move right on to Chris Askin, followed by Valerie Luvano.
All right, well, thank you for having me here, and thank you for considering this. Community Foundation of Western Nevada. So in January, we went to that first event, and you don't see many things happen quite like that. There's a lot of plans that are on shelves along with the studies. And what we saw was a community coming together, not just 3 or 4 partners, but potentially dozens or perhaps even hundreds on this effort. So in support of that, we approached the group and we said, would you like us to help expand this to perhaps hundreds or thousands of people in the community, all who are stakeholders, who care deeply about this issue as all of you do? So the answer was yes. So we, in support of this effort, we put together a contact list with thousands of individuals, reached out to them. This includes policymakers. Many of you came to the conversation that was hosted. But it also included 300 different funders. It included the developers. A lot of people who, if engaged in the conversation on the front end, will be involved with support on the back end. So our focus is on implementation of whatever recommendations come about, to have the community, the public support behind the changes that you perhaps adopt in the plan and other changes that are implemented. And then personally speaking for the Community Foundation, we've looked at impact investments and other ways that we can try and engage people in creative funding to help really implement some of those solutions in the future. So thank you, and I certainly urge your support of this.
Thank you, Mr. Askin. I'm sorry, Valerie Luvano from Renown Health did not wish to speak, however, does have comments. She'd like to express her support of the Affordable Housing Plan as a representative of a coalition creating a collaborative plan to end youth homelessness. So next I have Ann Court, followed by Sherry Jameson. Is it Court? I'm sorry, Corey.
For the record, my name is Ann Corey. I'm with Community
Community Health Alliance, community health centers. I've been working with Renown and about 30 other partners to create a comprehensive and collective plan to prevent and end youth homelessness. And just to kind of reinforce the depth of this planning effort, we will proceed separately with our plan, but we want it to align with this plan, and we're hoping that by demonstrating how that will work, that other special needs housing can develop plans to address community issues, and they will also be aligned with this plan. So it's just, I wanted to emphasize the power of having this central plan that we can all work off of. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corey. Okay, I have Sherry Jameson, followed by Kelly Marshall.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Sherry Jameson from the Food Bank of Northern Nevada. We are one of the 12 founding members of Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities, and one of the key components of a healthy community, or one of the 4 key components, is food security. And the reason that we at the Food Bank are so tremendously supportive of the opportunity before you today is that up until these last few months, 1 in 4 children in our community lives in a home that cannot reliably provide 3 meals every day. That just changed, and now it's 1 in 5. Housing is one of the key levers to food security. When you're paying more than 60% of your income on housing, it's hard to afford food. So, you know, beyond the first and most important opportunity for improving food security, which is a job that pays a living wage, affordable housing, you know, blows it all out. You know, that is the key lever for us. So we are tremendously supportive of this opportunity and hope you will vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jameson. Okay, Kelly Marshall, followed by Julia Ratty.
Thank you. For the record, Kelly Marshall. I'm the contract coordinator for the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and Washoe County Continuum of Care for the Strategy to End Homelessness. And that group that creates the strategy is called the Reno Area Alliance for the Homeless, or RAH. It's comprised of over 80 partner agencies, including nonprofits, for-profit businesses, the faith-based community, the local jurisdictions, hospitals, law enforcement, county and state social service agencies, advocates, all working to prevent and end homelessness. And on behalf of the RAH Leadership Council, which met in June, they instructed me to come to this body and share with you that they strongly support the idea that the RPGB would play a leadership role in the development of the Truckee Meadows Affordable Housing Roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Senator Ratty.
Hello, and thank you for having me today. I just wanted to come and make sure that everybody was aware that the legislature did pass SCR 1, which was a bill that I requested to create an interim affordable housing study. Now you can all go ahead and sigh about the need for another study. Go ahead. Groan, it's fine. But my intent here was, being familiar with the great work that was being done locally, is to use that work as a springboard so that as you are doing this work at the local level and coming up with solutions where you live, that if there is current NRS that is a barrier to affordable housing or new NRS that may be needed that would facilitate some of the efforts or some of the solutions that you bring forward, that we could tackle that during the interim and bring back those solutions to the next legislative session. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that was the intent. There's some work to be done to figure out what's going on in Clark County to make sure that anything that we do at the state level supports what we're trying to do statewide, but also builds off the brilliant local solutions that I expect to see from this work. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to get with you offline, and I hope to participate as much as possible in the regional efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Brandhorst. And I do not have any other cards. If you did wish to speak on this item, if you could fill out a card with the clerk. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. I just wanted to let you know what kind of a neighborhood I live in. The neighborhood is horrible, just awful. All the poles and wires, you see all those poles and wires that are in my yard? Because the poor people cannot afford to pay for their gas and electric. They can't even afford to pay for water. They cannot afford to pay for hot water. I have a water heater. They cannot afford to even pay for their cable. They can't even afford to pay for their internet. Oh my God. They can't even afford to pay their rent. That's the kind of a neighborhood I live in. And they're all very poor people. Breaking and entering. Yes, they break in anytime they feel like it. They steal whatever they want. They steal from all the neighbors in the neighborhood because they can't afford to purchase it. Also, the break-ins are really bad in my neighborhood. What do they carry? Hammers to bash our brains in. To bash our skulls in, because they can't afford to have a place for nothing. Trespassing charges were charged against them because they don't belong in our neighborhood. They need to stay out of the neighborhood because they don't live there at all. Oh, what do? They're arrested. They go to jail, they go to prison, and they're back out within 2 hours. They come back with their machine guns to shoot down the neighbors because they were the ones that called the police and had them arrested. Oh my. Stakeholders, I heard this. Yes, that's what they are. They just break in and think that they can sit there in our homes, eat in our ovens. They eat off of my stove. Oh. And what do? They also think that they can take baths in my bathtub whenever they feel like it. Oh my. And it's called breaking and
Thank you, Ms. Brandhorst.
stealing.
Okay, so going back to item 7A, we have a motion on the floor with a second. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Let's move on to item 7B. Ms. Robinson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item will be Ms. Knox and Mr. Kusha. And I believe Mr. Smith will join us for a moment as well.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Ms. Knox?
Must have scared them
We're
all
just
off.
waiting to get our, oh, there we go.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, Lauren Knox, Regional Planning. This agenda item provides the board with information regarding the 2017 Regional Plan Update. I'll be doing this presentation in conjunction with Nate Kusha and Jeremy Smith. So here's a brief background of what we're going to be going over today. So following the budget allocation discussion at the April Governing Board meeting, staff has been working to further refine the process of the Regional Plan Update, develop a vision and direction, and refine engagement methods. We'll provide you with an update on each of these items. However, I first want to note that as part of this process, we've established the Regional Plan Working Group. This group consists of staff representatives from the City of Reno, the City of Sparks, Washoe County, and RTC, and it's anticipated that this group will meet on a regular basis and work together to provide TMRPA with assistance and expertise throughout the update. The items that we'll discuss next have been brought forward and discussed at this working group meeting. So I'll go ahead and jump right into the process. So we've developed a 5-phase approach to the update, which also recognizes pre-update work. I want to note that this is a draft and we're here looking for feedback on this piece. So I'll walk us through each of the phases, and also for reference, this process is further defined on page 49 of your packet. So first, let's start with the pre-update work. This timeline's a little deceiving due to the fact that some of these items have been a part of staff's work program for the past couple of years. But nonetheless, the information gained from these programs and projects will provide us with valuable information at various points in the process. As you can see overhead, this includes the industrial land needs analysis, the Truckee Meadows housing study, the Portland State University Urban Sustainability Accelerator Program involvement, which included the Truckee Meadows Service Area Report, Transit-Oriented Development Workshop, and some collaboration with the UNR School of Journalism.
Was this slide in our packet? Is this?
It is, it's not, I have it in there as a
Oh, in a
full-
handout?
Page
At our
49.
table when we came? Okay.
Page 49 has the whole breakdown.
I see it. Tabular, right? Where'd you get
It should be in the presentation slides. There's a full page
okay. It was
version.
at our table. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, it's in the. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Also, staff has been reviewing and researching other plans and update methods to gain an understanding of what has been done in and outside of the region, and also what the state of the practice is. All right, so phase 1, which I want to note is almost complete, includes an analysis of the existing plan. So staff has been going policy by policy in the plan and also comparing that to our Nevada revised statute requirements. We've done some issues and major policy identification and identifying subjects of interest, and some vision and direction. And as you can see, we're currently at the vision and direction statement, and we took a creative approach in developing this that we're excited to share with you, and we're going to get back to that a little bit later in this presentation. And phase 1 is anticipated to be completed in the first quarter of fiscal year 17-18, so we're coming up on that.
Phase 1.
Phase 2 will include laying the groundwork and finding our baseline with background information and establishing fundamental assumptions. In this phase, we aim to also establish overarching themes and goals and create the plan framework. This phase is anticipated to be completed in the second quarter of fiscal year 17-18. Phase 3 is where a bulk of the work lies. So this phase includes the policy development and analysis and creating the draft plan. Due to the highly technical nature of this work involved in this phase, we anticipate that consultant assistance will be needed. With that being said, with the board's consent, staff would like to go back and develop a request for qualifications with an emphasis on this phase and bring it back to the board at the next meeting. And this phase is anticipated to be complete in the third quarter of fiscal year 17-18. Phase 4 includes the adoption process, so the draft plan developed in Phase 3 will then be circulated to the public, local government, affected entities, and other groups for input and comments. Nevada revised statute requires that the Regional Planning Commission host a public hearing in each of the cities in the unincorporated area of the county, which is a total of 3 meetings. And then subsequent to that, the draft plan will be brought to this board for final approval. And that is anticipated to occur in the last quarter of fiscal year 17-18. And then the final phase is really all about implementation. So as you can see on the timeline, this phase will take some time to complete. For implementation, an arrest requires that the local government and affected entity master plans and facilities plans come into conformance with the adopted regional plan, and there's a time frame involved in that. Also, staff is exploring the idea of creating a regional report in which metrics and status on the implementation of certain policies within the adopted plan can be reported on, and we're still exploring that idea. All right, so there you have the draft phases. I want to note that throughout all of these phases, we do plan to engage the public in various groups, as this is really a plan for everyone. As I promised earlier, we will now get into the visioning work that we have embarked upon, and for that, I'm going to turn it over to Nate Kusha.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. For the record, Nate Kusha, Regional Planning. We're now going to go ahead and go through our vision and directional statement development. So due to all the visioning work and values work that the region has recently seen, staff has taken a very innovative approach to develop the vision and direction for the regional plan. We decided to capitalize on all the visioning efforts that have already been completed as an effort to save resources. This approach mimics what was identified by the board at recent meeting, and the saved resources can then be utilized to supplement other parts of the update process. To guide the crafting of the regional plan vision and directional statements, staff has made every effort to capitalize on all the previous community engagement and visioning work done by the other entities in the region. This effort included review of the values, vision, and mission of many organizations, including Ignite Sparks, the Reimagine Reno work, the Washoe County Community Livability Report, and the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan, as well as many other organizations that you can see overhead. Staff took the information gathered from the various visions and captured the commonalities in these works that would best represent the vision for the Truckee Meadows as seen from a regional perspective. In addition to this work, staff also considered the requirements stated in the Nevada Revised Statutes, NRS 278.0274, which outlines the contents required to be in the regional plan. Staff also utilized the previous vision statement found in the current regional plan as a starting point. The existing vision statement was expanded upon using a more broad vision statement supplemented with directional statements. We felt that this approach would be more helpful to allow for continued reference back to the directional statements during the development of goals and policies of the regional plan update. Staff has presented the vision and directional statements to the regional plan update working group and received some input, which can be found as attachment 2 to the staff report. Staff intends also present the draft vision and directional statements to the Regional Planning Commission, as well as all the various stakeholders. And we've also sent out a flash vote survey about the directional statements and vision in order to garner public input and confirm the community values. So overhead is the draft vision and directional statement that we have come up with. This is kind of small in this slide, and we're going to take it piece by piece coming up. You can also find it on page 43 of your packet. So this is the draft vision statement. The Truckee Meadows Regional Plan is the foundation for a well-planned and resilient community which supports our unique quality of life and promotes the distinct characteristics of our region. We now have the first 4 of the draft directional statements, which read: plan for diverse and growing population in which all can prosper, promote a safe, healthy, and interconnected region to uphold a strong sense of community, manage growth in a way that maximizes resources and minimizes impacts, preserve, protect, and value our natural resources to ensure a vibrant environment today and in the future. And continued, efficiently provide public facilities and services that can sustain and support growth in our region, bolster a strong economic base, and maintain an economically competitive community, foster coordination and communication among local governments, regional entities, and residents, and measure regional success to ensure thoughtful implementation of the plan. From these directional statements, we will be further developing our themes for the regional plan, and there is a worksheet on pages 51 and 52 of your packet on which you can write in any questions or comments that you may have about the vision and directional statements, and we will be taking any feedback you have at the end of the presentation. And now we'll be talking about communication engagement, and I will go ahead and hand it off to Jeremy Smith.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Jeremy Smith with Regional Planning. So staff has been working to refine the plan for communication and engagement with various sectors throughout the update process. In addition to the Regional Plan Update Working Group, staff has identified that the general public, various focus groups with topic-specific expertise, stakeholder groups, and other special interest groups will also need to be consulted. Staff is currently compiling the details of these groups and finishing the communication and engagement plan. What we have today to talk about is a component of that plan, and that's, we hope, and that's something called MetroQuest. And so you can kind of get a feel here that it has multiple media tech that it can be employed on. But what is MetroQuest? Well, it's really a public engagement software. It's more than a survey tool. You're probably familiar with something like SurveyMonkey, which is out there you can get for free, ask whatever questions you want. Typically, the response rate on something like SurveyMonkey is 5%, 5 to maybe 10% if you're doing really well. According to the folks at MetroQuest, they're seeing much higher numbers. They're getting upwards of 40% or more, 50% in participation in their surveys. And that's because it's not just a fill in the blank, agree, disagree. rate 1 through 10 kind of a thing. It's really an engagement tool that allows for education and some pretty innovative and connected pieces, which I'm going to demo for you today. It's self-serve, so we get to do all of the background work to build the surveys. We have full control. There are 14 screen types, and so each survey is made up of 5 screens. You can choose from 14 to put that together. They've done extensive research on best practices for this kind of work, so you're getting that package included with the MetroQuest package. And again, optimized for mobile, tablets, the web, all of that. Here is an impressive array of logos from planning agencies across the nation. There's a similar array of logos that they provided me, that folks that are using this in engineering and planning firms. The point here is that this is being used by hundreds of agencies to do exactly the kind of work that we're contemplating with the regional plan update, and it's been very successful. How do we plan to use it? Well, first off, we want to engage, as I mentioned, the public, stakeholders, elected officials, and working groups around various components of the 2017 Regional Plan Update. So some examples could include getting down to the specifics of policy reworking, right? We know that some policies aren't working as we want them today in the regional plan. How do we get the proper feedback from all the groups involved? This is one way we can do that. Evaluating the impacts of different growth scenarios. We presented 2 different growth scenarios as part of the housing study. We want to continue to leverage scenario planning as part of the plan update. And then likewise, looking at cost to serve different patterns as another example. We hope to build through this process an engaged group of citizens and staff and folks that we're able to check in with throughout the regional update process. This is something we learned about in our pre-update work at Portland State. They had a software called Opt-in. They had something like 20,000 participants, but they could continuously sort of take the temperature on things they were trying to adjust in their community, and that's what we hope to build as well. So now we're going to get into the part of the demo here where I don't actually have a mouse to control this, and so I'm going to use my surrogate hand, Damian Kerwin, to attempt to show you a live demo of MetroQuest. All right, so you would go into the site. Again, there are 5 panes. You can probably see them numbered there.
Can they make it bigger? Can you roll
I think
it up?
that's the size that it ends up being. It's optimized for tablet.
No, I mean,
oh, there you go.
they can control.
He can zoom in. Yeah, good call.
That's good.
Thank you.
You need that.
Whoa.
If I had the mouse, then maybe. Thank you, hand. Magic mouse. The first page is always, when you create one of these surveys, a welcome page. It allows for branding. In this case, it's Abbotsford, which is up in Canada. They're calling their plan update Abbots Forward, which is kind of catchy. But here you can educate about what you're trying to do and show, align the users with who you are and what it is that you're promoting. Then we would go to the first sort of survey page, number 2. Thank you, Damien. Magic mouse. And before you go to any page, there's often this helper that will pop up. You can dismiss it if you know what you're doing, but if you're having trouble negotiating it, this leads you through how you operate the tool. We've done it before, so we can click out of there. In this case, they're asking to identify 4 items from the list at left, bring them up above the line, and then prioritize them. So you can just pick any 4 that you'd like, Damien, and we can put them up there. But what's really interesting is that as you drag these things up there and you start prioritizing them, it's going to become interactive with the subsequent pages of the survey, which is really kind of a neat thing. It's a little bit slow. If you don't like any things that are listed there, you can go ahead and suggest another item, provide comments. Can you get one more in there, Damien?
No job.
It's okay. So let's just say that's how we decided we were going to rank our priorities. There they are. So that's information in and of itself. But then we go to the next step, the next pane, approaches in this case, and we would have full control on what we wanted to name stuff. It's taking a moment. Okay, so here's now approaches. You'll notice that at the left there, they're linked. So the choices from the previous screen that Damien chose, housing, parks and environment, transport, infrastructure, agriculture, those are the ones that show up at left, and you can get rid of that. And so now you can do a deeper dive into each of those topics to find out what is it about housing that's important to this user. They can go in there and rate with a series of stars, for example, what's going on. We can go ahead and go to the next pane on this one, Damien. So that's an example. And again, there's 14 of these different screens you can implement. The next one is one I'm very excited about as a GIS person, right? I'm all about maps. And so the next pane, if it makes it, I know it's going to happen, allows you to actually get input from the users directly onto a map, and then we can get that at the end as a shapefile that can go right into the GIS and continue to feed into our database. So here in this case, they're asking, you know, place a marker where you think the city heart is or where there's a vibrant spot. We have full control again on what we might want to point out, like place a marker where you never want to see any development again, or place a marker where you want to see development happen. Then we can ask a few questions and get that feedback as well. That's probably pretty good. We can go to the last screen. So all of the surveys are started with a welcome screen. There's 3 survey type screens that go in between, and then there's a thank you screen, which here it allows you to acknowledge the help that you've gotten from the user and also ask for some demographic information. What the folks at MetroQuest have indicated is that if you ask for the, you know, like your zip code or your email information after you've already engaged, you're probably more apt to provide that because now you feel like a participant instead of like, what are they trying to get out of me? You know, you probably want to be contacted again and know that your feedback is being interpreted. So that's the basic concept. I'd like to go to the other page if we could, the one from Southern Nevada, just to show you a couple more features which are kind of neat. Same setup. You can see again the colors are slightly different, but there's 5 pages. Start with the welcome screen. We have the branding, and this is a chance for education too. So we're getting feedback, but we're also providing education to the people that take the survey. I think we can just skip right to, let's go to preferences, please. Thank you, Hand. Okay, so this is something that we talk about a lot in the office, and that's the concept of trade-offs. And really like it because this is particularly visual, but safety with regard to transportation. What's more important to you? Is it higher vehicle speeds or fewer serious crashes? This has you have to make a choice, right? We might be saying, do you want to be close to town? Do you want to have large lot? Maybe you can't have both. So we want to get that kind of feedback as part of the regional plan update process. And you can see there's several, you can have 4 or 5 tabs in each page here. And lastly, let's go to the future investment one. This is fun. So obviously we have limited budgets, that's been pointed out today already. And so but we know that we need to spend money on certain priorities. And so you can actually assign an amount of money or chips, if you will, to as your total universe of funding, and then you can identify issues that need to be funded, and you can ask the user to then drag these coins over and indicate what they'd like to spend the money on. And what you'll find out really quick is there's probably not enough money to go around to all of the different things. And so by doing this, we're going to get an idea of what pops as the most important. And besides, it's just kind of fun to move money around if it's not your money, too. Exactly, right. So again, finish with the wrap-up where you can ask for this kind of information. But in a nutshell, this is the kind of information that we'd be able to gather. And there are more screen types that I didn't go into. There's scenario-specific screens, other mapping implementations. If you want to find out more information, I'd be happy to talk with you offline about more of it or point you towards the website. We think it's a really neat tool. So thank you very much, Magic Mouse, for that help. If we can go back to the presentation, that'd be great. Okay, so one of the points on this slide, which is interesting, is the amount of data points that get collected then. If you have that high level of participation, people are engaged, you're getting, for the example, the RTC South, they had 6,800 participants. That's a lot of people, and that gives you a representative sample, right, of the community you're trying to engage. We're looking for around 2%. That is going to require somewhere around 9,000 folks, hopefully, to get involved with us. And to do that, we're anticipating we're going to have to leverage all of our collective networks, our email lists, newsletters, et cetera, to try to build that network of engagement. But what's great about having all of these data points is then, we're pretty data-oriented. You can filter and analyze what's going on with the survey, how it's being taken. In the bottom, you'll see here this, oh, you guys can't see that? Why am I doing that? Well, at the very bottom, there's a histogram, blue and yellow. It's showing when people engage. That gives you an idea of if you launch the survey, do people eat it up right away or do they wait a week or something? That's interesting. If you get that demographic information, you can break it down by age group. For example, maybe seniors. You can see how they're answering things versus younger generation, zip codes, that kind of thing. All of the data is handled by MetroQuest, but we have access to everything. We just don't have to set up any of the architecture, which is great. And so it's super useful. What does this thing cost? Well, it's a 1-year subscription, and in that time period, we can do an unlimited number of surveys. And again, we control the survey content, so as much as we want to work, we can put surveys out there. We have engaged partner agencies in the region. We already have 4 or 5 lined up to provide some additional funding to help us to fund this piece. And so that's been very helpful. And as part of that, we've been saying, the regional plan has these, we reach out to many different facets of our community. We want to make sure you're represented. So if you can give us a little money for this engagement, then you can also help us to craft the kind of questions that we ask around your specific topic. So that's kind of a win. 12-month subscription, not to exceed $25,000. So that would be basically the price tag, hopefully a little less, as low as $21,000. Finally, how will we roll this out? I kind of mentioned it already. Number one, we'd get it on our regional plan update website page, and there'd be a link. That's we can kind of see in this artificial city of Springfield. We've also been, we want to target the email lists, the newsletter lists, the contact networks, targeted groups, that sort of thing, as I mentioned. And then finally, this idea of kiosks. Maybe we can have a secure kiosk with the tablet embedded in it, sitting in a place where a lot of people go. And they see a sign that says, hey, help plan your community. They can go over there and take the survey. We can put the kiosk in association with meetings like this or at other events. And as well, we could have staff with tablets at other events, like let's say the rodeo. We show up, we have MetroQuest loaded on there, we have the questions ready, and we can just stop folks and start asking them. So those are some of the ways that we hope to roll this up to get that feedback for the community. With that, I would like to turn it back over to Lauren Breer to finish us up on the regional plan update.
Jeremy, I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I love the kind of data that you can drive from that, and that it is real interactive. My concern is, how do we engage older citizens who are not, obviously I see this as being very millennial and moving up to maybe younger boomers, but
Sure.
I'm thinking of my dad. I'm thinking of a lot of people that are a lot of our senior citizens who are very engaged in telling us what they want in our community, but are they comfortable with that complex of a process? Are they comfortable with the computer?
Possibly not. And I think that's where we need to actually get out on the ground with the tablets and engage and talk to them. We can fill out the forms by just asking the same questions and showing the pictures. So I imagine that we might not reach as wide of a net, but I think that I'll make a note to specifically think more about how we can, address that issue specifically.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. Burke-Bigler.
Suppose we took that portable unit and went to the senior centers.
Exactly.
That would be a staff person there working with the senior centers. The senior centers are pretty full most of the time. So that would be a really good way to tap into the seniors. So
both
Excellent.
senior centers.
yeah.
And actually, Senior Fest.
Perfect.
You got a ton of seniors at Senior Fest that aren't at the center. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
All right, so there's quite a bit of information that we talked about here today. So just to kind of recap, we talked about the draft process. For that, we're looking for some feedback and also some direction to draft a potential RFQ. We talked about the draft vision and directional statements. We're looking for feedback on that piece as well. And we talked about communication and engagement, and specifically that MetroQuest tool. All right, so there is a possible motion overhead. I also want to note that any feedback that we receive today is going to be brought forward to the Regional Planning Commission and utilized in drafting some final products. So we are all available for any questions that you have.
Okay, do I have questions, comments? Any of the above motions? So on those motions can be any combination or?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
looking for kind of feedback on all of those pieces.
Okay, Ms. Breckus.
Yeah, do you mind getting that first slide on? It's not, I don't know if it's the first slide, the one, the phased approach on? It was the one that's at our desk. Yeah, right there. Yeah, timeline. Yeah. So the housing study in question, that's the housing study we did. That's not the housing study that we just talked about at the previous item.
Correct, that's the Truckee Meadows housing study, the one that was presented back in December.
Where would you put that one on this?
The one that was just discussed.
Yeah.
That'll definitely come into play when we're doing our policy development analysis and when we're looking in those overarching themes. So it'll come to play definitely in that phase 2, phase 3 section.
Okay, so that's, it's fresh in my head. So that's there. And then I guess one thing I'm struggling with a little bit, and I'm not objecting, I'm just saying, you have a vision statement, which I think is pretty good. You have these directional statements. This, for my colleagues on the Reno City, represents well over a year of what we did at the Reimagine Reno, which was the bulk of our public participation. So I'm having a hard time getting to this point of, your vision statement, your directional statements, because those are the launching pads for policy. At the same time, we're talking about bringing on this involved input tool. And so it's almost like that should have been front-loaded and we're back-loading it, and I just don't know if it's the best planning approach. What would make me more comfortable, and I like the technology, I think it's great, however, I think it's something that, in my mind, it looks like something that would be employed in a planning process that has a much more robust front-end public involvement schedule, which we don't have, and I think that's primarily budgetary. I think what I'm not saying here are two things. One is I think there's a lot of lack of just baseline knowledge of what the regional plan is, why we have it, what it does. I mean, I can't tell you how many people want to know why the city, comes up all the time, why the city has extraterritorial jurisdiction. Now, is that within the TMRPA? Sweeter, is that outside of for outside of the statute? It's neither here nor there because it's really integral to how the TMRPA then bakes into the spheres and the TMSA. So just leaving that there, but that concept I think is very important. And so I would almost like to see a TMRPA do the rotaries, the this and that, and just explain to people what the regional plan frameworks are, what is annexation, why is annexation. I'd almost like to see baseline knowledge and then go out on the policy themes and goals is when you're more reactive than, in the whole world, where would you spend your money is here's a theme, presumptive that someone has some knowledge of the baseline, this is how this would play out, much more real scenario. But anyway, that's one thing. And then another thing I want to note, and it may even be a legal question, but I'm not going to pose it as one, is I did not hear the words or see the words Regional Planning Commission in here. And at least for the straight master plan, it's really the Planning Commission's master plan, and I think it's actually the regional plan's plan. So one thing I've really enjoyed at Reno has been the joint leadership meetings with them, going on topics. I think we've gone at milestones, but I think also on topics. And so, I was wondering about that. And so I don't know, I've been so anxious to just get going, and I feel like Reno's going to be very prepared to come in, because we've got, we know where we're going to be at on annexation, we know where we're going to be at, we're going to be in here running on stuff, I feel. But, just want to make sure that we have a fair process for our public understanding what's going, what the knowledge is, so.
Do I have other comments? Or I'm looking for a...
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'll
if I may.
let Kim go ahead and address that before we look for a motion.
I'm so thankful that you brought up the conversation about the joint meetings between the the Planning Commission and the City Council, because that was actually, we were looking at that model, and we think it's a wonderful one, and we were interested in knowing whether or not you found it to be successful. So that is something that we would like to entertain and utilize that particular approach here as well. I really like this idea of around this kind of educational baseline knowledge approach. I think there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of ways that MetroQuest can help us, but I also think it's very important to get out there in the public and have some of these conversations. And I like this idea of kind of starting with this level set understanding of what, kind of regional planning is. So I've written that particular piece down. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, or I'm looking for a motion? Mr. Lawson.
A quick comment. And my worry is if you have to do it at two different times, as Ms. Breckles was saying. I think the baseline approach is absolutely correct. You need to inform people so they can make a good decision. But if you do it at the same time and do the survey right after, you tend to get what you gave in information back. So it almost has to be separated by a length of time so people can formulate their own idea. But I agree with you, as I always say, that 95% of people don't even know what a city councilman does. So, and it's trying to figure out what regional planning does. Wow, that's a whole different animal.
If I may, Madam Chair, just speak to
Yes.
some of the comments. I think that one of the things we were really trying to do was leverage the work that's already been done. You know, Nate showed many of the logos. You guys did a very robust outreach part, around vision and values for the Reimagine Reno effort. And so we didn't want to focus our engagement efforts where they've already been focused. We were trying to, basically use that information. We have been using a tool called Flash Vote to engage around the vision and values. So that's something we've already used as part of our communication and engagement tool set. But I think that we don't necessarily know exactly what we're going to trigger as we start to uncover these policies. And so having a tool like MetroQuest to allow us to get in and ask those complicated questions, I think is kind of how I've envisioned us using it as well, not just around that front-loaded vision, because I think our community knows where it wants to go, and we've done a lot of that work. So I think it's the secondary work, probably in the phase 3, as we develop policies, and even phase 2, to really utilize that tool.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Burkus?
I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if, and I do think the schedule is overly aggressive. I have to say that. I think it's bordering on not entirely realistic. Just haven't, but, I'm optimistic. But maybe, if it's $25,000 to purchase that, maybe, I guess it's a year subscription. It would have been good to have it, 6 months ago. I'd almost rather see $25,000 be baked into some temporary staff to go do a dog and pony show all summer, spring long on the plan, and then, really structure it for, plan content with the MetroQuest when you have the plan content out there. I don't know, because it's going to be a snapshot in time. Will you have it in response to the plan content? Maybe if it could be the 100 pages of the plan, and each policy, it's really carved up, or how off the shelf is it?
As far as MetroQuest, we have full control over what we want to ask about. So if we have specific plan content and it's particularly nebulous and we want to weigh in on it, we can get it out there.
Okay.
It's got the capacity to evaluate different scenarios. That's definitely something that we are trying to put out there, right? So,
okay.
You can, I think it's, you're absolutely right. I wish I had already had it 6 months, or we had already had it 6 months ago as well. And I think we can also hold off on starting the start date of the subscription so that we maximize the amount of time we have it available to use, so we're not sort of having it sit there and not being used.
Okay. Well, with that, I'd just love to see you guys out informing people in the community about the regional plan.
I agree.
Ms. Robinson, did you have anything else you wanted to address? Well, and also, my thoughts would be, as you're engaging partners, we decided to go with the MetroQuest, the possibility of other community partners that would help offset those costs. So if it's delayed a little bit, it gives you more time to discuss with partners timing and costs, so that we wouldn't be footing the full amount. So I like that possibility. Okay. Looks like no other comments.
You want a motion?
I'm looking for a motion. It looks like the top two we've kind of discussed, input, feedback on the plan and on directional statements. So we're looking possibly, if the last two possibly, or whatever motion you'd like to make.
I was leaning towards, I guess, number 4 right at the moment. was
One,
to move forward with the MetroQuest, but I guess I'm unclear about what the first 2 bullets are trying to get at.
The first one's,
So what we were looking for in those first 2 bullets are just some feedback kind of on that draft process. So we've received some really good information, some education pieces thrown in there. And then also for the draft vision and directional statements, just to get some feedback on that piece as well.
Do you feel like you got enough feedback?
I think we did, yes. Thank you for that.
Okay, so but the third one, you're looking for the actual RFQ for the regional plan update and then bringing it back for final approval would be the first step. The second piece would be the MetroQuest, correct?
Correct.
So you're
Okay.
wanting 2 motions?
So 2.
You can put them together. You can put them together.
All right, so I'll move to direct staff to prepare an RFQ for the 2017 regional plan update and bring the RFQ back to the board before it goes out. And number 2, to direct the staff to continue engaging with their partners. Go ahead and inquire the MetroQuest in amount not to exceed $25,000.
I guess, could we have some, I'll second it, but could we have a little discussion on that?
Okay, yeah, I have a motion on the floor by Member Dewar, seconded by Member Breckus. And discussion?
I mean, I would just appreciate this phased approach, and I like to keep these for the duration of a planning process. Incorporate that housing that we just, threw onto the work program, so it's also got a line. And if we can get that back, I think we were asked, I was scratching a few notes on that, and I'm prepared to turn them in today, the directional statements. But the other question, the third one was the RFQ. So what is the RFQ budget amount? I think it was in the staff report. What's that anticipated to be, Ms.?
So the budget that was approved, well, the draft budget that was approved at the April meeting was for $150,000 for the regional plan.
Okay, so that's intact. The housing piece is extra and above and beyond, wherever that comes. Okay, I see that. Okay, so $125,000. Do we really need the RFQ to, because we're on a short time frame, when's our next, I'm trying to figure out the schedule. Our next meeting is when?
August is the next regularly scheduled meeting.
So the RFQ will not go out, be released until August. I presume it would have a 30-day term period. Contract award won't start until, when would you envision contract award on that?
We were also, just to be clear, identifying that perhaps there'd be a joint meeting in July between the Planning Commission and the Governing Board, and that would be the opportunity to be able to review the RFQ together.
Oh, okay.
So we'd be able to issue that particular piece. When we've talked about utilizing the money that we have in terms of the RFQ, it's really around good policy development and that kind of understanding around unintended consequences. And that's where we'd like to spend the money. And to us, that looks like phase 3.
It's phase 3? Okay, so they'll be ready to rock and roll November 1, or their product will be, rock and roll November 1, and then they'll deliver a product to us mid-January. So they're going to have November and December and January. They're going to have 8 weeks to be on and get us a plan draft?
Yeah, I see phase 3 up there kind of going through March. So I would identify through that kind of end of February, beginning of March timeframe.
Okay, for them to deliver the product. And would they be the drafter, or would they just provide you some technical assistance and guidance? Or do you think they'd actually be because at the end of the day, there's only one author on documents.
That's a fair point. This agency usually likes to take editorial control at the end.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor with no further discussion. All those in favor of actually 2 motions, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do I make the motion? Okay, I need to make a motion on our agenda. We are, 7C was our next item, but I'd like to make a motion to move item D in front of item C, and I'd need a second for that.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll go ahead to item D. The litigation update, would that be Mr. Azevedo?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Governing Board. For the record, Norman Azevedo. This is the litigation that was filed as a result of the failure of Washoe County to bring the particulars of AB 39 to this board prior to submission to the Nevada legislature. At our last meeting, AB 39 had been withdrawn, and we discussed offering a settlement offer to Washoe County. In front of you are 3 items of correspondence. The first one's dated April 17, 2017, from myself to Mr. Liparelli. The second letter is April 21st, 2017, from Mr. Liparelli back to myself. And the final letter is dated May 3rd, 2017. It's a letter from myself back to Mr. Liparelli discussing the different settlement plans or terms. As I had indicated at our last meeting, given the fact that AB 39 was withdrawn, if we could settle the agreement through a stipulation, including 2 points that have arisen during the pendency of this litigation. First, the status of the settlement agreements from the 2002 and 2005 cases under the same case number, that there'd be an agreement that those settlement agreements have actually terminated. And second, that under NRS 278.0286 subsection 2 and on regulation on procedure, your regulation 10, that Washoe County would bring forward prospectively any legislation that repeals, amends, or anything else from NRS 278.026 through 278.029. In response to my offer, which is included in the April 17th correspondence, Mr. Liparelli responded in his April 21st, 2017 letter, in essence, rejecting my offer with a counteroffer that omits the references to the settlement agreement and any discussion under NRS 278.0286 subsection 2 and regulation 10 of your regulations, not addressing the issues that are pertinent there. And if you look at the May 3rd, 2017 correspondence, the paragraph in the center of that letter that is single-spaced is in essence what Mr. Liparelli is offering. And so we put it on the agenda for today for the board to consider his settlement offer, and he is in the audience. And so, Madam Chair, unless there's any questions, I think I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Liparelli to explain to you why the board should consider this.
Thank you, Mr. Azevedo. Mr. Liparelli?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the governing board. Here to respectfully request on behalf of Washoe County that you authorize the termination of the litigation that concerned AB 39, a bill that has been dead since April, involving a legislative session that's been adjourned and has no force whatsoever. The only remaining disagreements, if you even want to call them that, are now in the abstract. There is no concrete controversy or case remaining between the parties, and Nevada courts are not in the business of giving advisory opinions or mediating relationships between people. They're in the business of resolving live controversies, and there no longer is a live controversy involving AB 39. So the case can be settled two ways. One, by stipulation, which is by definition a cooperative undertaking, demonstrates that the parties themselves have resolved the problem, or through motion, which is litigation and requires the court to rule on the legal issues. I have a stack of papers in my office this high from Regional Planning's law firm, and this litigation, if it continues, will grow the stack. And in my judgment, needlessly, since AB 39 is dead and buried. So a word or two about the terms of the proposed settlement. Mr. Azevedo's proposal would effectively expand the reach of the statute and the regulation in the regional plan to include things beyond what it says now. What it says now is that before a local entity can submit a recommendation for legislation or begin any program or project, and here's the magic language, related to the mandatory provisions of the comprehensive plan, it has to first effectively give notice to regional planning, and that's it, just notice. In other words, regional planning does not have a veto or a say in what the proposal is. It merely must be informed about what that is. And Washoe County complied with that substantially by telling regional what its proposal was. But the statute and the regulation don't apply because what was asked in AB 39 and what was communicated to regional was a plan in the proposal to change the makeup of the governing board, not to make a change to the mandatory provisions of the plan. So another reason why the lawsuit is needless, because the statutes and regulations that have been cited don't apply to Washoe County's proposal. So in my judgment, continuing this is fruitless. And in light of the spirit that is emerging among the member agencies and the governing board members and their plans to work together on a regional plan update, continuing litigation is antithetical to that notion. May I answer questions?
Any questions for Mr. Liparelli? Mr. Lawson?
No, you know what, I'm willing to let this go. It's over with, it's done. See, you guys understood where the problem was. I don't see that happening in the future, so we'll deal with it again in the future if it happens, but I think it's time to let sleeping dogs lie and move forward.
Okay.
Mayor Martini, do you have any comments?
No comment, I agree with that.
I'll second that
Okay.
if it's a motion.
Do I have any other questions for Mr. Liparelli or Azevedo? Or, okay. Okay. So Norm needs to present again. So your recommendations that would then become a motion if the board so considers. So recommendation again.
Madam Chair, if I may, in light of the motion that was made, what I would submit is if the board is willing to accept the language proposed by Mr. Liparelli, we can include that in a stipulation. But the issues of the settlement agreement and the legislation, the notice to this body, will not be resolved and may arise in the future. That's a business decision for the board, and if you're willing to take that risk, then you can accept his language and we'll move forward.
I'm willing to accept that risk.
I think we can also, and I think that if it arises at some point, it does, but it's also something that can be extinguished at the time of the regional plan adoption as a complementary action to adopting the plan. So I think, you know, I'm willing to take a gamble and let it ride for a period of time too.
And address it as policy, a possible policy change as we look at the regional plan update?
If it's needed to at that point, if it's still a point.
Okay. Okay, so do I have, Mr. Lawson, is that a motion to accept legal counsel?
I would leave it the way it is, let's just move on.
Okay.
Deal with it in the future if it comes up again.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by
Yeah.
Mr. Lawson to accept legal counsel's recommendation. Second by Ms. Breckus.
I'll second, and I guess the motion involves Mr. Acevedo then making the appropriate filing in the court with Mr. Liparelli's stipulation language. Okay.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, if I
Acevedo?
may.
Yes, please.
As I understand the motion, the board is authorizing me to enter a stipulation pursuant to the language included by Washoe County, Mr. Liparelli, to dismiss the case, which both parties will bear their own costs and fees.
Mr. Liparelli, good with that? Away we go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, although we have
Madam
to vote
Chair, I
on
know
that.
our
Yes.
clerk hates gestures from the audience, so I was given the thumbs up to mean I agree with Mr. Azevedo's description.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Azevedo. Yeah. I need a recess for about 2 or 3 minutes. Mayor Martini has to leave, so we need to take a quick recess, and then we'll be back to finish the meeting. I've got about
Did David leave? He's back. Okay.
You haven't been Reno Council. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move back on. We are on item 7C, which is move back to 7C, consideration and possible adoption of the Truckee Meadow Regional Planning Agency budget and work plan for 2017-2018. Ms. Robinson.
Madam Chair, in the interest of time, we will go through this very briefly. I took the assumptions that we were discussed at the April meeting, including the work plan efforts, put those all into a final budget. Our assumptions include a variety of pieces, such as some RFPs, management of stormwater, a 2% increase for staff. We have some specific RPU, regional plan update assumptions as well, and how we would spend the money specifically set aside for that. Here is the final budget. You can also find it in your staff report. Recommendation is that you quickly review this budget based on the assumptions that we've made and provide any feedback, approve the budget, and the possible motion is in front of you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Dewar to approve the budget with a second by Ms. Burke-Bigler. All those in favor of approving the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, nobody's nay. Okay, we are, that motion carries. So we are on item 8A, members and directors report. Any directors report?
Madam Chair, just that we will provide a full legislative update item at August, since the session just ended on Monday. We didn't have time to produce that, so we'll do that in August. Thank you.
Okay, do we still have a quorum?
One, two,
Yeah, you got one
four,
with Mr. Robson.
Yep,
David's coming
there he
back.
is.
Okay. Okay, so no other members' reports. Next meeting is August 10th, 2017.
And we will be in touch about that.
The next scheduled meeting is August 10th, and we will wait to hear if there's a special meeting called in July. So right now, we're looking at August 10th. We also have public comment under item 8A. Kathy Brandhorst. No, because when are we doing your?
We haven't got up to B yet.
We're not at legal counsel yet. So we're at legal counsel's next.
Yeah.
Oh, we're so close. Okay, sorry, you guys. So close.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. The legislative update. Well, we still need to look into the problems. 4 more Sparks police officers have died. Oh my God. Kidnapping is another one that you need to look into. Kidnapping children. Rapists, we have rapists in our city too that needs to be looked into. I have not seen anybody take the rapists off the streets.
Go in front of you guys all the time.
Also, we have laser beams that put people to sleep. This has not been taken care of either, taking the laser beams off the streets either, and knocking people down on the streets with laser beams. MRIs are now another issue that you need to look into too. They are killing and murdering people through the MRIs. Lawsuits are growing in this city, and boy, I'm telling you, the lawsuits are outrageous, counting over 1 billion times in lawsuits. Also, I just wanted to tell you, you haven't taken care of nothing in the legislative update. You have not even told us anything about the murderers either that are still walking the streets and killing and murdering police officers, killing and murdering sheriffs. Also, they are killing and murdering a Secret Service, G-men, and other authorities that have died in the duties. You haven't even mentioned the U.S. military either. They have died, tortured, and why is this going on? You know, because they have been here trying to help us resolve some of these issues with the legislator update. And I haven't seen it. I have not seen you even helping us out here in this city to control.
Thank you, Ms. Brandhorst. Okay, we're going to move on to item 8B, Legal Counsel Report, item 1 and 2.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, Norm Azevedo. Item 1 and 2 is addressing the contract of your executive director. We are at that phase. Her contract expires at the end of this year, 12/31/2017. And if this body does not extend the contract today, then by operation of the contract itself, it will automatically renew for a one-year period. So the first step is, this group has to decide whether they wish to extend the director's contract, and if so, for what period of time. I think last time it was a one-year extension, or was it two-year extension? And that's the first matter before the body.
So I'm going to make a motion to extend Kim Robinson's contract for 2 years.
I'm in a second. I have a motion by Member Dewar. I seconded the motion. Any discussion?
Yes. We
Mr.
still need to
Lawson.
give Kim a raise.
I think that's Part B.
That'll be
Okay.
part 2. That'll be part 2.
B of B.
Remember,
Wrong one.
she hasn't gotten a raise, and
So
she
we're
took the job at substantially less than the previous director.
Okay, so we're on the question 1. No other discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second point is addressing the annual performance evaluation of the executive director. The contract itself contemplates that you do an annual evaluation. What is somewhat unique in this regard is the last evaluation took so long that it concluded in October of last year due to the meeting schedule of this body. And in the material or in the packet, there are materials that can address if you wish to go forward at this point with an additional evaluation. Only 6 months has elapsed since the last one, a little bit over 6 months. It's your choice. If both parties agree, the governing board and the director, you could extend the annual evaluation to a later date, put more time in between yourself and the last evaluation,
Well,
or you can continue now.
my recommendation, if I may, would be to have the evaluation in about 9 months so that it's done and we consider it before the end of the following year, 1 year from now, so that we do it in like the 9-month period or so it gets done, and that we don't run into this challenge with the every other meeting. So if that means doing month 8, so it's ready for month 10, so it
Okay.
can be adopted by month 12, whatever, but just to get us back synced up, that would be, because I'm very sad. I mean, we talked about how much, it shows right here how much Kim had improved, the functioning of the agency in the previous period. So that would be my recommendation.
I guess,
Well, and we've done the evaluation already for
We
this.
just never took action on her
this
raise.
This year. Correct. We've done the
The
evaluation.
evaluation,
Was 6 months ago?
Kim, you want to weigh in on this?
Excuse me, the final evaluation was done for October 2016, and there was a raise at that point in time.
Yeah,
Yeah, there
October
was a sm-
of 2016.
That's correct, and it was back to July 1st.
Right. It was retro.
Correct.
And can you remind us what percent or? 5%.
so, I mean, here's my thing. I mean, she has gotten a raise, so, just clarifying the
For the
record.
last.
Yeah, just clarifying the record, because I think Mr. Lawson says she's never received a raise, and she
Well,
has.
I'm referring to the fact that she's still not up to where the previous director was.
Yeah.
And that's been, 6 years now you've been here?
5.5.
Yeah, no, I just want to clarify, I remember voting on a raise. I guess the other thing is, I thought we were trying to marry up the evaluation with the contract extension, and in that way, it probably should have been in front of us like 2 or 3 months ago, so we could do the evaluation, then today, do the extension. So maybe we do I hate to see an evaluation go too long, without evaluating someone. So maybe we do the evaluation in August and then we do it again in April. I mean, I'm just thinking that way, you know, we're there. Because the way Ms. Stewart mentioned, it would be October to the following, what are you thinking?
No, I was, so a month, let's see, let me check month 8. So we're at July. I have to have this.
Next meeting is August.
I guess I was talking about doing it around the February, March timeframe, where our meeting is around that time.
Yeah.
So that it's ready in time and that it's all adopted by the end, and it's baked into the annual budget.
Yeah.
And then it's all approved for July 1 start date.
So today, when we're just simply extending we just moved to extend her contract.
Yeah.
Right, but we still.
But the evaluation piece is something separate. We have not. We're
Should
just
do
trying to decide on
annually.
now.
Yeah.
Right, we should do an annual evaluation. This time might be a 1.5 year, but I just think it would get us synced up and it would get us in front of the budget process, and it would bake into
Okay,
the budget
okay,
so that
okay.
July 1 it would become
Okay.
effective, that kind of thing.
So can we just make it clear then it's at our February meeting? Okay.
Yes.
We can, I guess, though, to Mr. Lawson's point, are we looking at this point, we extended the contract, are we able to look at a possible pay increase without the evaluation?
Yes, you may.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
6
would be
months.
that would be a motion someone would need to make
Well, I'll
today.
make a motion that we give Kim a 2% raise,
I'll second.
and we
Oh, sorry.
schedule the evaluation for February of 2018.
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second.
And the raise to take effect today, or whenever.
July
possible.
1.
July 1, perfect.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. We are, item number 9 is a possible request for future agenda items. I think we've got a lot.
I guess it's not an item, it's just, you know, we're kind of talking about a separate meeting in July, right? And what is that meeting topic going to be?
The RFQ?
The conversation that we had been having at the staff level was bringing together the RPC and the RPGB together for their first joint meeting, be able to provide some feedback on the vision and the draft statements that we have received, and be able to discuss the RFQ moving forward, but also engage those two groups together in the full process.
Okay, I think that's great. I'd like to go in a little bit deep into the vision statements, you know, maybe each one is, you know, input and so on, because then it can be almost a public input sort of thing. And then maybe also an example of the road show that you're going to be doing to show people, you know, do that education piece. You know, I'm really looking at like, you know, what my daughter does for science projects, right? You know, like a little board with, you know, this is the regional plan, that's how it impacts you.
Okay,
Not that she does those anymore, but.
Any other items for future requests, for future agenda items? Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. I just want to clarify in terms of the conversation around a deeper dive on the vision statements. The direction from the governing board in April was to take the feedback from a variety of the various surveys and bring that together into the kind of the draft vision statement piece. I just want to understand kind of.
That's these right here,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, maybe scenarios of, you know, what, you know, discussion on each of these.
Okay.
You know, is what I'm thinking. And you have some really good graphics on your website, don't you, that explain the regional plan, don't you?
We'd like to think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to item 10, public comment. I have one card for Kathy Brandhorst. He's going to finish, so he's going to go through hers, do written correspondence. Can I leave without, will you guys have a?
I think we just still need to make sure we have 5 people. I know, but I mean with your leading.
6.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. Oh boy, you just don't know what's happening in the chambers either. I just walked down from my chair down to the podium, and somebody had to kidnap one of my Minnie Mouses, who is the government. And I just wanted to tell you, You can destroy the government all you want, but it looks like that we come back and try to help again. The murderer is standing over the dead body. Still, the gun is pointed to the dead body. And we already know that the gun has been fired. And guess what? The person with the gun is getting away with murder. But nobody's going to arrest the murderer. Nobody's going to shoot the murderer down because he gets away. And with the murder still in process. Also, he doesn't go to prison, it looks like. He doesn't go to jail, serve time for the murder that he did, and we all know he is the murderer. What is wrong with this law? There is no law. It looks like you're just allowing them to take over the city because we already know that that person is the murderer. He did the murder, she did the murder, and the murderer is still walking the streets. I don't know why they're escaping from prisons, why they are escaping from jails, and why they cannot stay there to serve their time. You know, I just don't understand. They have life in prison, and yet they're still not in prison. They're still not in jail. But you're allowing them to go from neighborhood to neighborhood to shoot down innocent people. And also, you know, it just doesn't make sense to nobody because they are still doing the same thing over and over again and again and again. They can kill 1 million people in the city and still get away with it, standing there with a gun in their hands. And you're allowing it because it looks like we're never going to be free.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 11, written correspondence. Do we have any written correspondence?
We do not.
Okay, moving on to item 12. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion. Second? Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Start getting